Good evening. We don't have any individual we'd like to recall tonight, but I think it's appropriate on the heels of the celebration of D-Day events that we recall the thousands, the tens of, the hundreds of thousands of brave patriots, American and in international bodies, who, through their courage, changed the course of history on D-Day. Thank you. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'm going to ask the clerk to call to order.
Roll call for the meeting on June 10th, 2019. Councilor Khan.
Present.
Councilor O'Brien.
Here.
Councilor Shan.
Present.
Councilor Tontar.
Here.
Councilor Vogel. Present. Councilor Z.
Present.
Councilor Devlin.
Here.
Councilor Earls.
Present.
Councilor Eigenman.
Here.
Councilor Junta.
Present.
Councilor Connell.
Present.
We have all present and accounted for.
Do we have any late file items or other
There are
items on the
no
town?
late file items officially. There is a letter from the chamber for informational purposes on the councilor's desk.
Public comment. And may I advise the councilors, it's going to be a long night. It's rather warm in here. Feel free to remove your jackets if you feel so inclined. Peggy Poe, first up.
May I say first? I'm second on the list, but may I?
Megan St. John, I see you've given me some sort of stage direction here. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you.
Name, address, please.
I'm Megan St. John, 14 Basin Street, Newburyport. So I'm here tonight to support the public-private initiative to install public access automatic external defibrillators on Plum Island. Defibrillators have been proven to be a vital remedy when sudden cardiac arrest occurs. We'd like to supplement the city's fine public safety efforts by placing this equipment as close as possible to where we live. All funds have been raised privately to cover the purchase and installation of the equipment. All will be gifted to the city. Training on CPR techniques and AED use will also be provided by qualified volunteers. The project from the beginning called for 2 AEDs on Plum Island, one at the center located in Newbury and one in Newburyport at the point. Newbury has fulfilled its commitment, having installed the equipment and run several training sessions. Newburyport, while initially enthusiastic, has withdrawn support and communicated an unwillingness to install and maintain the equipment we had purchased. You will find in your package of materials for tonight a summary of the project, as well as a petition signed by over 200 people, almost all of whom live in Newburyport on Plum Island. The signatures, I have to say, were really easy to get. Few could understand the city's reluctance to participate. So the one thing that I think is important for us all to know, Newburyport already owns at least 28 AEDs, but none is located year-round on Plum Island. So we are asking that the city accept this gift of a 29th AED, install it, maintain it at Plum Island Point for the health and safety of all who live and visit there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Now, Peggy Poe. I hope I pronounced your name correctly. I apologize if I did not.
Hi, I'm Peggy Poppy. I live at 12 14th Street in Newbury. I know I'm a guest, but thank you for having me. I'd like to take you back 2 years ago to the origin of this initiative. On a beautiful summer morning, we were awakened to someone screaming, "Help, help," loudly outside on our street. I ran outside to find my neighbors lining the street, helpless bystanders to a tragedy inside a home where our neighbor had suffered a fatal heart attack. One neighbor was calling 911, but calls were sent to multiple dispatchers. 2 other neighbors were inside administering CPR. It took 20 minutes or more for EMS to arrive. Neighbors stood by in shock, desperately wanting to help but feeling helpless. I was haunted by what I witnessed that day. It was heartening to see my neighbors respond to a plea for help, but they were unable to do more than call and wait. After a career as a public health nurse program director, I automatically went into research mode and started exploring how other communities support bystander emergency response. Data shows that public access AEDs significantly reduce deaths from sudden cardiac arrest when administered by bystanders before EMS arrives. In a similar scenario, a bystander could run or drive to the nearest AED, use the call box, reach the correct dispatcher, and return with the AED. The AED could arrive minutes before EMS, and in the event of a cardiac arrest, every minute increases chances of survival. Communities like ours have AEDs in parks, at beaches, and trailheads. People on Plum Island now have an AE call box at Plum Island Center. However, minutes count, and Plum Island Point is too far from the center. They need an AED at Plum Island Point. We ask the city to reconsider installing and maintaining the AED we purchased for them with their knowledge and support. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
She stayed just within the 2-minute limit. Leslie Eckel.
I'm here to speak.
Please approach the microphone. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Leslie Eckel, 36 Warren Street, and I'm here on behalf of the NRA and the Waterfront Trust. It's not a matter that's on the agenda tonight. May I speak to it?
No.
Can I
Unless
motion
we have a
to,
suspension of the rules.
a motion to waive the rules?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of suspending the rules and allowing her to speak, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
You may.
Okay, thank you very much for letting me speak. I'm here on behalf of the NRA and the Waterfront Trust. I'm here because the city has illegally placed 5 artists' shanties on the Waterfront Trust property, on Marketplace Landing, and on NRA property. The city did not get approval. I don't even know that, to the best of my knowledge, they didn't even ask the Waterfront Trust if they could place the shanties on the Waterfront Trust property. But I can tell you the history on the NRA. The NRA did look at this. The city asked last August if we would consider putting the shanties on NRA property. The NRA looked at the request and decided not to make a decision about it. The NRA decided that it expected that its property would eventually be going to the Waterfront Trust. We all know where that's going now. But anyway, we decided that that was a long-term park decision, and that we really weren't in a position to make that decision. So we got back to the city and we said, no, we're not going to give you permission to do this. This is for something in the future. Lois Honegger then came back to me this spring and asked the question again. And I explained to her that we'd already discussed it, and that no, the NRA wasn't going to be in a position to give them permission to put the shanties on the NRA property. And last Saturday, 5 shanties were placed on the NRA property and the Waterfront Trust property. I have to say this, that this was illegal, and for a government to act illegally, what is the recourse? I am asking the City Council to instruct the city to remove the shanties from the Waterfront Trust and the NRA land. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Mather.
Hello. My name is Lynn Mather, and I live on Plum Island. This is a continuation of a discussion of the AED project. The grassroots committee that Peggy formed to bring AEDs to Plum Island began meeting well over a year ago. We gathered all kinds of information: public health, technical specs on equipment, costs, what other communities have done, and relevant laws. Our proposal to bring AEDs to Plum Island was approved by both Newbury and Newburyport. With written assurances from the Board of Selectmen of Newbury and Mayor Halliday, we wrote grant applications, we worked with Plum Island businesses on fundraising, we made personal appeals, and we organized jars of donation in the different restaurants. We were overwhelmed by the enthusiastic community response, and our fundraising far exceeded our expectations. We ordered the AED equipment, and when we went to approach Newburyport to finalize the AED cabinet, problems emerged. The city appeared to be withdrawing its support. Direct appeals to EMS officials in Newburyport and the mayor over the next few months were unsuccessful. They expressed concerns about maintenance of the equipment and about liability. Both of these puzzled us. Checking to see if batteries are still working takes only a couple of minutes every month. As for liability, there is none for anyone who uses the equipment under Massachusetts Good Samaritan law. And there is no liability for the city if the equipment were to fail, as long as there is documentation about appropriate and proper maintenance. In circulating our petitions on Plum Island, which Megan mentioned got over 200 signatures, we learned that many knew already of the AEDs. They applauded us on our project. They shared stories of their importance. In addition, we heard stories of frustration about slow response times for emergencies and a feeling that Plum Island is being ignored as part of Newburyport. In conclusion, I want to ask you to please support this proposal and support the views of our neighbors to bring a defibrillator to Plum Island Point. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you. And Amy Roberts. Before she gets to the microphone, there was another name in here, Linda Lambert. Your name is crossed out. Did you choose not to speak?
It's something that's not on the agenda.
Okay, thank you. Amy.
I'm Amy Roberts. I'm from 5 Dexter Street. I'm a little worried. I feel like I'm having an out-of-body experience talking to you, so I'm going to take a deep breath. I've lived here for 19 years and have 3 children in the public school system. They're all very happy here. And I appreciate your work on the budget thus far. I emailed you all today and would just like to publicly relay some of the email's essence. Someday I would love for the school system to be able to reach and aspire for more to best meet the needs of the entire student body and to prepare our students for success. For now, for tonight, I appeal to you all to have the school system at the forefront of your mind when considering making other choices or cuts that might free up available money to give a more significant piece to schools. For myself, I plan to be more aware and involved in the process far earlier next year. I greatly respect Superintendent Gallagher as well as our amazing principals, and I hope to collaborate with them on the school's vision. I ask for you, the City Council, to give the school budget your highest level of prioritization as you move forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
And councilors, you might note that this is the mother of the next Steven Spielberg. Thank you. And that concludes our public comment period. Next is the mayor's comments. Mayor?
Thank you, President Cottle, members of the City Council. I know you have a very busy agenda tonight, so I will just highlight a few updates. It's been an incredibly busy last few weeks in terms of events, activities in the city. But first and foremost, thank you so much for your due diligence and the amount of time and effort that you have put into review of our FY20 budget. I would also like to, in particular, thank Finance Director Ethan Manning and Matt Coogan, Chief of Staff, for their assistance in terms of answering the multitude of questions and further supportive documentation that you requested in order to do your work in terms of passing this budget this evening. But I feel very strongly and would like to thank the department heads for their hard work in putting together budgets that they believe are in the strongest interest of their individual departments, and would also like to recognize the collective work that both city staff and the schools have done to put this budget together for your review this evening. The Home Rule petition. The Joint Committee on Municipalities and Regional Government held a hearing on our home rule petition to dissolve the Newburyport Redevelopment Authority, Senate Bill 2202 and House Bill 3698. Representative Jim Kalkhorst, Councilor Jared Eigerman, Planning Director Andy Port, and I presented testimony in support of the home rule petition, and Councilor Zeid also submitted written testimony. Following our testimony, the committee voted unanimously in favor of the bill, and as the bill moves through final review, I will keep the council updated on process and progress. The paving contract is about a month delayed, and that has to do with weather, which has backed up the contractor who has our paving contract trying to finish up work in other cities. But I applaud our DPS staff who really been pushing our contractor, and now have a firm date of July 2nd that they will begin milling High Street starting from 3 roads and heading down to Winter Street. That will be followed by the next week where they will begin doing the paving on High Street. They've already, you've noticed the street is all marked out, and they've identified select sidewalks along High Street that they have already begun working on. That's a separate, we have 2 separate contracts this year, one for paving and one for sidewalk work. And then after they finish High Street, they move on to Merrimack Street, similar process, mill, and then pave, and they do simultaneously as they move along, select sidewalks along the way. Those are the 2 big projects. In addition to that, I thank staff at DPS who put together a 10-year spreadsheet, which is attached to this update, of all the roads that we have completed in the past 10 years, just so that you can see an overview of that. I know that you have an order before the council reflective of the discussion you had on the CIP. I look forward to having further conversations with you about that. Again, I ask you, when you are thinking about this, as we'll have further discussion, whichever committee it lands in, about bonding, the $150,000 to $175,000 it costs to bond, about $2 million every year, the limited number of contractors, the limited construction schedule, and weather factors. And do we really want to carry to $150,000 to $175,000 in carrying costs as opposed to putting that into work? Something to think about as you review the bond before you. This past Friday was the CSO Summit. This is the start of, it was a bill Senator Diana DeZaglu had put together for a commission, and this was the kickoff of that group. It was a 2-hour meeting. Councilor Connell was there, as well as Health Director and Frank Giacoloni and Chief of Staff Matt Coogan. It was a wonderful meeting where we had an overview of the river. We had high-level presentations from a researcher from Kleinfelter who had been doing research on the river since '02, presented really good information about the impact of stormwater also on the health of the river, not only just CSOs. We had a panel of presenters from the operators at Lowell, Lawrence, and Haverhill, who talked about what they have been working on in their administrative consent orders, and then talked about our next steps. We'll be meeting again in September, and really are looking at notification as a short-term goal, and then obviously funding for our infrastructure needs as we go forward, and also connecting with Manchester and Nashua. The EPA was there. They presented information about the new NIPSES permits, which are now requiring that notification of CSOs are part of that permit. I have provided you with the link. There is a comment period on the permit good through July 8th if anyone is interested in submitting information on that. And there's a picture of the panel of the operators. Youth Services, the Meridian Survey has come back and surveyed the land as well as delineated the wetlands. That survey now will be forwarded to DCAM. The next step is called a state and municipal polling, where it's basically notification to the world that this is surplus property. And that will be the next step, and then following that would be the completion of the appraisal. My congratulations to the Custom House, Ken Jackman, and of course to Paul Hogg, our harbor master, and his staff, who really made a 10-day successful event for city and visitors with the tall ships that came in. Congratulations to the NHS graduates. It was a wonderful ceremony last Sunday, where had great speeches by the students, really talking around caring and giving back. And I thank you to all the city councilors who participated in the event. And just one other nice event that happened that same day was the Red Sox Trophy was here. It was a fundraiser for Sean Perkins Foundation and to develop funds to upgrade Perkins Park in honor of Sean Perkins, who left us way too early. And you'll see a picture in my update of Alice Joe. She is 101 years old and the oldest Red Sox fan in the city, and she got to have a private showing with the Red Sox Trophy. And then again, on the back of that, you'll see the spreadsheet, thanks to DPS, who put that together, of all the roads that we have worked on in the past 10 years.
Thank you, Mayor. Welcome.
Thank you.
We will move on to the consent agenda, but before doing so, I've asked the clerk to move the report of the Committee on Budget and Finance to the end of the agenda so we can get through other matters and not have people linger if they're here for something other than the budget discussion. I'll ask the clerk to walk us through the agenda now.
The consent agenda this evening consists of the approval of the minutes for the May 28th meeting. There's one change on page 5, which is a notation, accurate notation of the roll call vote with the idea that Councilor Khan was recused on that vote. Transfers, there are none. Communication, there are 4, all going to public safety. Communication 157, Block Party Temple Street, 8/1/2019. Communication 158, Fill the Boot Drive, 8/1/2019. Communication 159, Greek Food Festival, July 26th through the 28th. And Communication 160, defibrillators on Plum Island, also to go to public safety. One appointment 104, Sheila Tenter, 10 Dexter Street, to the Tree Commission until 4/1/2022. With that change to the minutes, that is the consent agenda this evening.
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? We're done. What shall we do with the mayor's update?
Motion to receive and file.
Second. Second. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Okay. Appointments. We have nothing in second reading. Orders.
First order is a tabled order, which is Order 112. It relates to a space, handicap space on Lime Street, 20 feet from Water Street, and running for a distance of 20 feet in a southerly direction. Councilor Z.
Motion to remove from the table. Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion.
Point of order. I think you have to waive a rule first, because under Rule 7, it has to be referred to a committee, so you need a 2/3 vote to do that.
So moved.
And the motion then, would you withdraw your previous motion?
Correct.
And the second.
Second.
Do we have a substitute motion?
Motion to waive Rule 7F. Second. For the
Moved and
purpose of this
seconded to
item.
waive the rule so that we can discuss this matter without it going first to committee. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? I hear unanimous consent.
Motion to approve. Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Thank you for the correction, Councilor Eigenman. Councilor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. This is a handicap space at the bottom of Lime Street. Just to tell you a little bit of the work that's gone into this. I have been out there with DPS. We've measured the spot. We picked the best spot. It turned out to be the one at the corner, right at the bottom, so it's sort of the last space on the right. Number 2 is I did get a copy of the placard from the individual that was requesting this spot. It is valid and issued by the state. And third thing is, as you can see in the proposal, this is a time-limited space, which has become kind of our standard, so that there's an opportunity to revisit this as opposed to making it a permanent space. So it will expire. And of course, at that time, it could be extended if the need still exists. I would ask for your support on it. And I've done a couple of these in my ward when residents have needed them and have not had any issues with them. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Very well.
Thank you.
Orders, let's continue.
Order 114, which is a change to the passes in the garage with the addition of the following. Monday through Friday, employee monthly pass for the garage, $40. Submitted, Councilor Shan.
Motion to move to Budget and Finance?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Budget and Finance. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's in Budget and Finance. Next item.
Order 115, which is the addition to the 2-hour resident parking program, Section 13180, Ferry Road, on the southerly side in front of the property known as 1 Ferry Road, submitted Councilor O'Brien.
Motion referred to public safety?
Second.
I might ask the counselor, would he like to bundle 115, 116, and 117? Or at least 115 and 116.
The movement.
They're all going to public safety.
I'll make that motion, Mr. President.
Second.
Moved and seconded to bundle those three. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? And it is going to public safety. Thank you, councilors. Any other orders?
118, it is a rewrite of the zones for resident parking. And it is,
Motion for public safety as well.
Second.
Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Point of order, did we actually vote on the previous?
Yeah, it wasn't sufficiently clear. I meant,
Yeah, I don't think we voted.
we voted to bundle them and refer to public safety. Is my recollection.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was all in one fell swoop?
Yes, that's my, anyone want to challenge the judgment of the chair on the side? No.
No.
Move on.
Not tonight.
Order 119, which is a $10 million bond submitted jointly by Councilors Eigenman, Devlin, and Zede.
Motion to refer to budget and finance.
Second.
Moved and seconded to budget and finance. Discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah, we'll need to work on this in committee. Obviously, the mayor raised an issue about the carrying cost for, if you just did $2 million for 5 consecutive years. So one thing we might consider is $10 million all at once. So that's one thing we should consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Further discussion. All those in favor of referring this to budget and finance, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is referred. 120.
120 is a license agreement with respect to Spring Lane, and there's also a mitigation payment and appropriation of funds with respect to restoring property that was used during the Whittier Bridge I-95 improvement project submitted by Councilor Tontar.
Motion to refer to budget and finance.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's in budget and finance.
Order 121 is a gift with gratitude from Mark Tucker in the amount of $500 to be deposited into the City Scholarship Fund.
Motion to refer to budget and finance.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded to budget and finance. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's in budget and finance. 122.
122 is the annual revolving funds established for spending limits submitted by Councilor Tontar.
Motion to refer to budget and finance.
Second.
And seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's referred. 123.
We take 123, 124, and 125 together, Mr. President?
Let's hear the clerk read them, please. Introduce
So they
123.
are a bundle without doubt, Mr. President. There's an order to refer a High Street layout alteration to the Planning Board for the Safe Routes to School, that's 123. 124 is an order to acquire temporary and permanent easements and award damages for Safe Routes to Schools. And Order 125 is indeed the order of taking.
Did I hear a wise motion by Councilor Zede?
Yes. So moved to take them collectively.
To
To refer them to planning and
Moved and
development.
seconded to take these up collectively and refer to
Planning and development, Mr. President.
planning and development.
Mr. President, may I make a suggestion? I
Yes.
believe 123 also has to go to the Planning Board.
Can we refer things to the planning board? Okay, so moved. In addition.
Is that in addition to the
Something new
motion?
every day.
Okay, good
Raise a
catch.
good point, I don't know the answer to, but let's...
Motion to mail them a letter also.
Is there a second to the councilor's modified motion?
Second.
Moved and seconded, his modified motion. It's a bundle of the three to planning development and also to the planning board.
Sorry, Mr.
Order
President, 123 is the only one going to the Planning Board
Correct.
and the Planning and Development. The other two are also going to Planning and Development.
Thank you for the clarification. Everyone understands what we're voting on? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Thank you, councilors. Ordinances.
I'm right there. Ordinance number 36 is relating to the recording of Newburyport Planning Board and Newburyport Zoning Board of Appeals meeting. It goes on for several pages. It's submitted jointly by Councilors Z, Chan, and Khan.
Motion to refer to general government?
Second.
Moved and seconded, general government. Discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? General government. Committee items, we will we will
Yeah, that'd be good.
withhold budget and finance for the moment, putting it at the end of the agenda. Education, is there anything, Counselor Genta?
Thank you, Mr. President. I'll be brief. I know we have a lot of work to do. We met last Monday with members of the school committee and the superintendent. Some of the items that he informed us on, he gave us, again, he went over his Friday memo that he does for his folks, which is really a ton of good information here. He's in negotiations with 3 unions. All of them are going very well, and he hopes to have them wrapped up by the end of the month. So let's hope that that happens. Being new to Newburyport, he was mentioning Newburyport traditions that he's finding out about and loving. Things like first grade books from the Mullen Foundation, when the first graders get books given to them, and in the book are the names of their sisters and brothers and their friends, all incorporated into the story. It's a great tradition. Things like Ivy Day, Vespers. He was invited to the country study buffet, which is a second grade. It's a second day function where kids learn about different countries, and they have different projects that they bring in. So it's really, really interesting things that are new to him. He's from Salem, I'm from Salem. We hadn't done things like this in the past, and he's really enjoying the Newburyport traditions. We did have one conversation in regards to the valedictorian and how there's no GPA anymore. And he explained to us, the thought process behind eliminating the GPA, and then of course, what do you do if there's no grade point average? Who's the valedictorian if there's no numbers, correct? So it was really interesting for him to talk about how the chase, if you will, in Newburyport schools to excel motivates many children to take all of these advanced placement classes. And sometimes what's happening is they're doing that in lieu of doing other things they love. So instead of maybe playing music or participating in art. And so it was the children that came and said, we want to get away from GPA, and we want this race, if you will, to end, because at the end of the day, we want to not have to worry about that, but we want to experience more things that we love in school. And when you really learn about, why their incentive to do it, it's really enlightening on my part. It's the first time I had heard it before. And at the end of the day, I assume, and this is the reports that I get back, is when a college is looking at transcripts from kids, all of these kids have GPAs above 4. They're all excellent students, but it's the well-rounded students that do all of the other things are the ones that can be picked up by some of these top schools, because it's not all just grades, it's actually a well-rounded student. So that was an interesting conversation to have with him. I hope I got it correct, and that's, if Charlie, if you wanna throw more into it,
It's just, I
please
wasn't
do.
sure that they eliminated the GPA. I think they eliminated class rank.
Class rank.
Which is
Sorry.
not necessarily the same.
Correct, sorry, class rank, thank you. And that's all I have, sir, thank you.
General government, there is nothing at this time. License and permits.
Nothing to report.
Neighborhood and city services. Planning and development.
Yes, motion to remove order 108, acceptance of former George W. Brown School.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none. All those in favor of removing ordinance 14, say aye.
Order 108.
108. I'm sorry.
Order 108.
Order 108. Excuse me. My mistake. All those in favor of removing 108 from the...
Aye.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Second. Moved and second to approve. Discussion. Counselor Eigenman.
Yes, we had a hearing on this last week on D-Day. The committee recommended 3-0 to recommend approval. Just to catch everyone up, I think it's now 5 or 6 years ago that the Brown School was closed. Attached to this is the minutes from the school committee where they essentially surplus the property under Mass General Laws, Chapter 40, Section 15A. But what's supposed to happen after that is that the city council is supposed to accept it and then repurpose it, and we actually never did that. So this is a cleanup. So this recognizes that the city council does in fact have the care, custody, and control of the asset for general municipal purposes. We're not specifying the purposes. It was dedicated originally as a schoolhouse. Now it's general municipal purposes. And I'm prepared to answer any questions if there are any. Thank you.
Further discussion? Hearing none. We'll take a roll call on this matter.
Roll call on order 108. Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Council President.
And Nielsen Planning Development.
Yes, one more. Motion to remove ordinance 14.
Excuse me, Counselor. It was my mistake. I initiated this mistake by requiring a motion to remove. We don't have to do that anymore. It's already on the agenda.
No, Mr. President, I did not submit it to the clerk.
Oh, you did not? Okay, go ahead.
Motion to remove ordinance 14, amendment to demolition delay.
Second.
Moved and seconded to take up the demolition delay. Discussion, hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve as amended in committee.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion, Counselor Agaman.
Yes, in order to comply with our rules, I put the proposed amendment in the packet before we had the meeting because the deadlines were off by a day. So we met on this on D-Day. The language is exactly as it's in the packet, except there was a useful suggestion by staff. So you just go down 3 lines, and I'll explain all this in a second. After, in parentheses, there's a phrase that says excluding dormers. It should read excluding dormers in compliance with this section. Excluding dormers in compliance with this section. Okay, so let me give you some background for those of you who didn't come to the 5 hearings we had on this. So the ordinance was originally adopted in 2005. It is a general law ordinance. It is not a zoning ordinance. And it now applies because we've since changed our zoning ordinance as sort of the backstop for historic buildings that are either not protected by the downtown overlay district or not protected by the demolition control overlay district. Those buildings are the buildings that are listed on the National Register as contributory, and that listing was done in 1984, so way back in history, and it's kind of an old, settled list. One nuance is that in the downtown overlay district, you may recall that we amended it to exempt 1- and 2-family homes that are in underlying residential districts. So the overlay district includes commercial districts, downtown commercial districts, and also some residential districts. So for example, the westerly side of Fair Street has some 1- and 2-family homes on it that are in our districts, and they're in the DOD, but they have never been subject to DOD. They do not require a special permit. We exempted those, but they are subject to demolition delay, and always have been. Okay, so what are these changes about? Working with staff, there was ambiguity about dormers. Dormers have always been excluded. They will still be excluded. They will still be excluded, but we have a definition of dormers now. Staff, particularly Jennifer Blanchet, provided guidelines from the city of Cambridge, which were very helpful. In our 5 meetings, we made sure to reach out to builders, and I'm grateful to Councilor Junta, the vice chair, for pushing that. And we really, they didn't want to be there, they'd rather be watching the Bruins, but they did help us, and we got this language in a way that they're happy with it. So if you skip to the end of the section, the exempt dormers, page 4, that is the crux of the change, really, is to define what a dormer is. And so long as a builder builds a dormer that meets these rules, and you can read them for yourself, they're exempt. They do not have to go to demolition delay. They do not have to go see the Historic Commission. They just go get a building permit. The other key change was there was no, and this came out in the hearings, there was no deadline to use the demolition delay. So again, the law's been around for 14 years. Theoretically, you could go through demolition delay in 2006, and the commission could say, no, this building is one we want to protect. We would prefer you not demolish it. And you would go through your 1-year delay, but you could come back 300 years later and pull a building permit. And that was never, we think, the intent. So we put in a deadline, and we're tracking the state building code, which normally gives you 6 months to pull a building permit. So after the 12-month delay, you get 6 months to pull your building permit and tear the building down. So basically 18 months to get your act together and tear the building down. And we thought that was adequate time, and that's what we recommended. And that came out 3-0. Thank you.
Discussion.
Just throw a little bit more at it. It was really a great exercise to have the builders, a few different contractors from Newburyport in the discussion. They were reading what was written and then saying, no, it shouldn't be like this. You should reword it that way. And the discussions back and forth between the committee and the builders to actually get a document that really gets to what we were looking to do, but also gives the builders a clear path. So if somebody wants a dormer on their house in this particular area and they fit the criteria, it's very easy for the builders to say it has to look like this. And the builders were good with that because it gave them a quick path to get to, I know if I do it this way, I'll be able to quickly move through the process at City Hall to get my permits. And then the other one that we really went back and forth on was when you pull a permit, how long do you have to actually close that permit? So we kind of talked a little bit about building permits and electrical permits and thought about that for a bit. And then sort of reflected back on the demo delay to say, well, I pulled the demo delay, right? And then I waited the timeout, but then I didn't do anything. So then the question is how long can you not do anything? And the way it was originally written was forever. And so now there's a time limit to whether you either got to do something or your permit to demo will basically expire on you. So took a lot of work and a lot of meetings to get here on that, but I think it's a pretty good document.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. I did attend one of the hearings and have been kind of following this one. I do rise in opposition. I do want to thank the sponsor for the effort that was put in the committee in trying to craft this into something that becomes sort of a bright line test. But for me, it still doesn't clear the hurdle on a couple different things. One is I think we're heading into a zoning rewrite, and I think design review is at what point does design review start to feel more like an LHD, which is a debate that this city had at length. And so that's one issue. Two is this isn't about dormers that exceed the height limit of the zone. So you already have a height limit in the zone that's supposed to govern what the height and the massing of the building is supposed to be. And this is sort of an overlay on top of that saying, well, it's actually, the height limit isn't actually this. It's only if you kind of build what we've written here. And that does frustrate me because I think it's very difficult, as much as we may try to define things, particularly in a historic place where it's hard to know. Every building's different. Every building have quirks and strange oddities and things like that. The third one is, we actually had an extensive debate or discussion, perhaps a better word, about the difference between what's called an upward extension and a dormer. And this is a learning experience for me because I'd talk to neighbors and say, what's a dormer? Well, a dormer is anything to what I think, if you knock on the average door, is anything that's on the same plane as an existing living floor. So if you already have second floor living and you dorm something out and you're still on the second floor, it's a dormer, even if the wall comes all the way out to the edge of the building. Turns out that's not the case. That's called an upward extension. We had a long debate about that. Turns out I'm okay with upward extensions. What I'm not okay with is if you have 2 floors and you go to 3, or use the dormer as a way to crack through the height limitation. The last one I'll mention is, I understand the need to have some fair timeline, because the timeline and the process is how neighbors have protection. But I recently had an issue in my ward where a resident pulled a permit unrelated to demolition and then fell very ill, and then came back and was trying to do the work that they had gone under a previous permit, and to make the house more livable following that illness, and had to basically restart the whole process again. So I'm not saying a time limit's inherently unfair. I'm just not sure that 6 months or essentially 18 months from the beginning, which could all reset if you're not able to do it. So those are my objections. I understand that it's an ordinance, so it only needs 6, but I did feel, I was participating, and I did feel compelled to state my objections to it.
Further discussion? Mr. Vogel, Counselor.
I thought I had my cloaking button on. I stand in favor of approval, and I greatly appreciate the counselor from Ward 2 taking the time on an afternoon to go through this with myself and a fellow counselor. I also had concerns and questions about it that were generated by a number of people, specifically contractors that I see very often, every day, asking me about this. And I tried to sort out the information, and I began to hear from the contractors how grateful they were to be invited to participate, and basically say, this is what we need, this is the guidelines we appreciate, and they are, in fact, very appreciative of the fact that it's in writing. So I stand in favor, and I thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Counselor. Additional comments, questions, discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call on this matter.
So roll call to approve ordinance 14 as amended on 6/6/2019, specifically on line 4, amended as explained, quote, in compliance with this section. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien? No. Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tontar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Zede?
No.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor O'Connell?
Yes.
2 no, 9 yes, meeting 6. Reading passes.
Thank you. Anything else from Planning and Development? Anything else from Planning and Development?
No, Mr. President.
Thank you. Public Safety? Councilor Genta?
You're no, yes.
Yeah. Motion to remove Order 101.
Does this require a motion to remove, or can we take it up?
Motion removed.
Motion to remove. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's out.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Discussion. Councilor Genta?
So we discussed this in committee. It passed 2-0. We did make one amendment to it in committee, and we put an expiration date of December 20th, 2020.
Fair enough. Further discussion. Councilor Zede.
I just have a question. Maybe I could address it through the chair to the parking clerk. Because this is only from 9 to 1, is the intention to put physical signs in, or to use temporary methods to block off the spaces during those times?
The intention would be to put a pole in. I think there's actually a pole they can use to put a sign that says specifically Sundays only 9 to 1. I mean, whatever the will of the council is. I mean, the churches, the bodies have put certain temporary cones out already.
I would just express
So
my
we used to
concern
do that.
as a, personally, if I see a handicap sign, I will not park in the space. I don't care if it says 9 to 1, if you're driving by the sign. So it's 2 spaces on a very busy thoroughfare. I have no objection to 9 to 1 on Sunday. But my request, perhaps as it were, is it's done by temporary cones or something that are removed so that, for the rest of the...
Subject to what the council says, we could certainly honor that request.
That's
Makes sense-
my
Makes
thought.
sense to me.
Councilor Ackerman?
My concern, though, is that's unofficial. I mean, if you have the church just put out the cones, it's kind of, it doesn't really look legit. So I would prefer to do the signs, but certainly not going to pick one. And this came from the church, and I've offered it to other churches as well, particularly the Central Congregational, in case they need it. I mean, basically, a lot of congregations are getting older, and they need more handicap spaces for those specific hours. So I defer to the rest of you how you want to handle it.
Further discussion? We could leave implementation to the Parking Advisory Committee.
Do you want to leave it to the parking clerk, or do you want to state it? Because right now, I think the sponsor's saying he would like a permanent sign, and I appreciate your concern that people will not park in it if it says HP, even though it says 9 to 1 Sunday.
Yeah, I mean...
However, my experience has been also that people are reading signs more, and they will figure it out.
I just think as you drive down, you've got 4 hours a week, basically, out of hundreds of hours in the week where it's handicap, and I think you'll be orphaning those spaces the rest of the time, so I would like to stipulate that it's done by, I don't know what the right terminology would be, perhaps temporary, and they could be provided the sign by the city, even if they're the ones that put it out.
Is that
So
a
it
motion?
does look,
Is that
yes.
a motion to amend?
Yes, and I'll let the clerk wordsmith that to be something nicer. And if it's not working and you're not getting compliance during those 4 hours, then I think we could revisit hard signs. But
Is the amendment acceptable to the second?
Is there a second?
Was there a second?
no. Okay, I'll withdraw.
Thank you. We're down to a motion to approve.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Present.
Thank you, councilors.
These are already.
Additional matters in public safety.
Yes, sir. Motion to approve Order 102, 15-minute parking space, 92 Pleasant Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve. Discussion. Councilor Genta.
This was also amended in committee. It was amended to expire on December 19th of 2019. And this was approved 2-0. The idea behind the expiration dates is this is a 15-minute parking spot in front of a new coffee shop. And the idea is to see if it works. We've done a few of these 15-minute spots. I think it's still kind of an experiment. So we'll give it a time limit. If it works, we can make it permanent. So we'll see how it goes.
What was the expiration?
December 19th, 2019.
Thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It's done. Anything else, Councilor?
Motion to receive and file Order 104, drop-off space at Market Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded, receive and file. Discussion?
Sure.
Councilor Stan.
This was meant to be for one of the inns, but since the area is already 2-hour parking allowed, we just decided we didn't need to put any more signs up, so should be fine without it.
Very well, thank you. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Anything else, Councilor?
Motion to approve Communication 155, Block Party, Dove Street.
Second.
Moved and seconded by Councilor O'Brien. Discussion? Councilor Genta.
All the paperwork is in order for this block party. I believe they've had it in the past. It was approved 2-0.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's done.
Nothing more to report.
Nothing more to report. Public utilities.
Yes, Mr. President, motion to remove Order 113, water sewer rates for FY 2020.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All those in favor of removing from committee, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Motion to approve.
Moved and seconded by Councilor O'Brien. Councilor Zede.
Thank you. The Public Utilities Committee, which is myself, Councilor O'Brien, Councilor Shand, all present, met jointly with the Water Sewer Commission as well as staff last week down at DPS. And we went through these rates for about an hour or so, including a lengthy presentation that was provided by the business manager. So I'm just going to go down a list of FAQs, and hopefully I'll hit everything. So we met. We asked a lot of questions about the rates, about the historic, about the consumption. There's a lot of different variables that are going in right now. And this is the bottom line. The proposal for this year is to make some changes to the water rate, going up about 1.6% if you're in the first category, the first 3,000 cubic feet, and then 1.4% on the 3,001 plus, and 5.7% on sewer for that first category, and 5.3% on the second. There is no proposed change to the flat rate, which is sometimes referred to as the ready-to-serve rate. It's the amount you pay, irrespective of how much water you use. What we did learn in committee is that, as you probably have heard, consumption is down. This, for a variety of reasons, it's been kind of a cumulative effect of residences installing more efficient fixtures, toilets, shower heads, etc., but also the city losing some large water users in the community. A paint company was named as one of those that used to use a lot of water in their industrial application. On the positive side, some new industrial applications were mentioned in business parks, which I won't mention the word tonight, it's already going to be a long enough night, may start using more water. So the trend has generally been down. For next year, the proposal, the projection, I should say, is for level consumption, which is actually kind of a touchy projection, but that's what these are based on. And so that's basically some of the backstory. As far as getting into the numbers goes, I did, unrelated, ask the finance director for some enterprise fund information and found out that, for FY19 projected, the water fund is estimated to turn an income of about $36,000, which is a percentage is essentially zero, and that's still not counting the last month, so that could swing. And sewer is actually projected to lose $256,000 through the end of the year. So as you know, these enterprise funds are supposed to be self-sustaining. So there's only two ways. If you don't like the rate or you don't want the rate to be this, there's only two ways to do that. One is to shrink the water department in some way. We did actually investigate that a little bit. Unfortunately, it's a system that largely is based on fixed costs, not variable costs. You have employees, you have equipment. The variable costs are fairly small. It's primarily chemicals and things like that, but even those don't swing big enough to make an impact on the rates. For those who are wondering, we did ask if we could charge more for the town of Newbury to use the water, those that are served by the system, which is Old Town off the regular system, and then Plum Island. And that was batted around and actually was done in the past, but was found to be probably not a good idea under the Water Acts of 1908. We did not have 17 hours to get into that night, but that may be fodder for future discussion. I'm supporting the rates. It was a 3-0 vote in committee. Bottom line is, last year we had a debate because the fixed fee was increased. This year it's all going to the rates, which does favor the higher users paying more into the system. I think during the budget tonight, we'll have another opportunity. If there's a way to shrink the water department, that's the way to talk about it. Other than that, I think we are where we are, and I would ask for you to support it as well so they can get the rate set on for next year.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'm going to ask for a roll call on this vote.
It's a roll call on Order 113. Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien. Yes. Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel. Yes. Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin. Yes. Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
No.
Councilor Connell.
Yes.
You just have to be different, no?
10 yes, 1 no. Motion passes. Order 113.
Nothing further, Mr. President.
Thank you. Rules Committee?
Nothing to report.
Budget and Finance.
Nothing to report.
Nothing to report. Let's all go home.
Motion to remove Order 105, the fiscal year 20 budget.
Want to take a break?
Is there a second?
Councilor O'Brien's wanting to take a break. Want to take a short recess? Councilor O'Brien is wondering if we can take a short recess before we start.
Yes, we will. All those in favor of removing this matter from committee, say aye. Aye. Opposed? It is out of committee. We had a motion to remove Order 105 from committee, and now we'll entertain a motion to proceed.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Traditionally, what we've done is allow the chair to give us some guidance on how to proceed. I'm going to defer to Councilor Tantar right now.
Thank you. First of all, I would just note that we had, I'd say, about 15 hours of budget workshops. We met over 5 days with department heads. I would like to thank the department heads for their patience in dealing with our questions, and also to the effort that they went to, that you all went to answer our questions. Secondly, I'd like to thank the finance director, Ethan Manning, and the CAO, Matt Coogan, also for their patience and for putting up with a lot of questions from all of us and getting back in a relatively timely fashion. So we appreciate that. I'd like to thank my fellow members of the Committee on Budget and Finance, the at-large Councilor Khan, and the Ward 1 Councilor Zede, and a number of councilors who attended every workshop as well. I think my sense is we went through this fairly in good detail. All right, so and we asked questions about a number of things. So having said that, the past couple of years, Budget and Finance has not voted on recommendations because it would be a waste of our time. That's an aside. And instead, we leave it to the floor. So I will turn it over to the president to recognize councilors who we're going to go through page by page, line by line. I would ask you that if you are suggesting an amendment, that you give us the page number and then also the budget number that you are referring to so we can keep a record. Thank you, and let's have some fun.
Very well, so councilors, with that introduction, we're going to begin on page 50, 50. We're going to go through line item by line item. As I read off the line item, if you have a motion related to that line item, we will take it up. If not, we'll move to the next line item. Councilor Tantar.
So I would just note for all councilors that we do have an amended version of page 50. Line 51101 in the original version had the mayor's salary in fiscal year 2020 going to 118,505. That has been changed to 106,500 for an 8.7% increase. That's the change.
So we'll start in 001, Personnel Services. The first line is 51,101.
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like to make a motion to cut $8,500 from 51101 on page 50.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Councilor Zede.
So this is a tough one. It is the mayor's salary, but I want to explain my rationale. There's been a long-standing tradition, often codified by law, that raises or reductions for any elected official don't take effect until the next election. That's baked into our charter for the city council, is that, if you vote for an increase, it cannot take effect until you face the voters again. And I think that's a pretty time-honored tradition at almost every level of government, local, state, and federal. And I think we should honor that here. I will concede that the charter would allow us to do this. I did read the charter several times, but I just think this violates a pretty basic tenet, which is that if you're going to vote yourself a raise, or in this case, this is a mayor's proposal for a budget, that you face the voters again before you enjoy that increase. And I think this was an artifact of a 2-year mayoral term in the old charter. Now it's a 4-year. The council is up in the fall, but the mayor won't be in 2 years. So I'd ask for your consideration and welcome any debate.
Further discussion. Councilor Tantar.
Yeah, I would note that there is precedent for this increase. In fiscal year 15, the mayor's salary increase, that was after the second year of her first 4-year term. So we have done this before. That $8,500 term actually, what it is, it's consistent with the increase in CIPU, in other words, CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So if one is to keep the salary of $98,000, that the mayor received in fiscal year 15, and you want it to have the same purchasing power as it did in fiscal year 15, $8,500 would bring you there. Again, first of all, there's a precedent. The council has done it in the past. Secondly, in real terms, purchasing power terms, it's a constant salary.
Further discussion? Councilor Augerman.
Yeah, so we're off. First, I just want to make a, before we get into all this, we'll be here for hours. I just want to remind everyone there are hundreds and hundreds of line items. And I think what you're going to find is, as usual, the council agrees with 99% of them. So, but we have a duty to scrutinize every single one. It's not personal. We're trying to be fair and also realize we have limited revenue growth. So on this one, particularly with the mayor, it is true. I've got the data. I voted for that increase for fiscal 15. I don't think the councilor from Ward 1 was on at that time. So, I hadn't thought of that argument. But that's actually not why I oppose the full increase. What I did is I asked staff to provide me with 10 years history so that I could compare that to the Massachusetts trends. And so the trend that I got was from Ethan Manning, the finance director. If you look at the state of Massachusetts overall for all wages and salaries, and I think this was emailed to almost to all the councilors, it comes out to about 3.6 increase annually over the last 10 years. That's statewide. And then for the positions that I asked about, he did a mean average. It's only about 3.1% they've actually grown for a lot of the positions that I was asking about. The mayor, however, has grown more. So the mayor's salary has outstripped the statewide average. And again, that statewide average is for private sector too, in fairness. So the chairman went back to fiscal year 15 and used the CPI from that. I mean, we can fight over the numbers all you want. I just want to give you my rationale. So I used the 3.6. I found that the mayor's salary has actually gone up 5.31% every year, if you average it. And I just think it's too high. So the number that I'm proposing is different than the motion, so I'm going to oppose the motion, and if it fails, propose my own to do a 4.84% increase. Where did I get that? Well, going through all of these hearings, that's kind of the basic number that most of employees in the city are getting, is 4.84. And I just thought symbolically it makes sense to give the mayor the same. I also do want to point out, I did look at the comparables, and I don't want to belittle that. The mayor of Salem makes something like $142,000, mayor of Amesbury $110,000. Again, took all that into account. There are also sort of ancillary benefits to the mayor of Newburyport that maybe those positions don't have. And I think this is the fair way to go. I do think the position deserves a raise, but I want to be consistent. And if the rationale is to meet the norm statewide the last 10 years, I'm going to oppose this motion and propose a 4.84% increase, which would bring the salary to $102,743. Thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. I'm just curious, is that an amendment? What is that?
It's just, it's arguing against.
I'm arguing against the motion.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't understand. So I rise in a favor of the proposed salary raise, and I base it primarily on the history that we've been given and on the Essex County cities, as proposed, that was provided to us by the Ethan Manning. You look at all the cities around us, and all the comparable cities, and I think that we're essentially just right up from the bottom, 5 spaces from the bottom, and I think it's and we stay there even with the raise. So I think it's appropriate that, given the averages, that we go ahead and approve it as proposed.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote on the proposal to cut line item 51101 by, is it 8,500, Councilor?
Correct.
Yes.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. The motion fails.
Motion to change it to 102,743, a 4.84 increase, which would be a cut of 3,757.
Second. Say that slower, please, the cut, for those of us who have to write it down.
Did the clerk get
How
that?
much is the cut?
Cut is 3,757, so it's normalized to a 4.84% increase to 102,743.
Is there a second?
It was a second.
It was.
I see Counselor Genta is seconded. Discussion.
Oh, go ahead.
Counselor Genta.
Yes, I support the 4.84. If we look through some of the salaries that we see going through here, that is a common thread. We also think about, what raises are happening out in the, out in the real world, outside of government. Most people are getting between a 2 to a 4% raise. In this case here, we're looking to give the mayor just under 5%. The mayor works hard. She does a good job. And, she hasn't had a raise in a while, so I think this is an adequate raise, especially for somebody who's negotiating contracts with other unions that are most certainly not going to see a 5% raise. So I think it's a good place for us. Thank you.
Counselor Devlin.
Counselor Argument. I'll defer to Counselor Argument.
Counselor Ivan.
Well, I just wanted to add 2 more facts. So again, to give you the numbers, so 10 years ago, the mayor's office position was only getting $60,000. So I really don't want members of the public to think that, we're not being solicitous of the mayor's salary. It's gone up over $40,000. So that's one. And then I talked about ancillary income. So one example would be the Wheelwright Scholarship. Automatically, every mayor, not just this mayor, but every mayor gets a stipend of $6,700 a year, really just for being the mayor. And that's a scholarship that goes to, I believe, a Protestant boy in the high school to go to college. So again, you got to look at the big picture. We're not trying to, be cheap out of the mayor. I'm just trying to be responsible and consistent on the kind of raises we give other people. Thank you.
Counselor Tantar, I'm sorry, Counselor Devlin. Counselor Tantar.
Yes, just for a prefatory statement, all the budget hearings that I attended, the department heads were very well informed, very cooperative. If they didn't know an answer, they were forthright about it and came forward and said, I'm not really sure, let me figure it out. Our chief administrative officer and Ethan were actually very good about that as well. So again, this is not personal. This is our job, and there were some things in there that you heard, and it was not squishy, but maybe hadn't been really thought out. So a lot of my cuts or proposed cuts would be along the lines of, I'd rather have you come back and ask us for some transfers for that so that we could focus on it, on a needs-based issue. On this one, I only have a couple questions, and I'm not sure, maybe it's to the Ward 2 counselor, and also maybe Ethan Manning. So my first one is, it was my understanding in the testimony that the mayor of Amesbury's salary is currently $80,000 and that they were proposing $110,000. Do we have any idea whether that was passed yet, or?
Yes.
So
Mr. Coogan.
So from my understanding, it was passed by the city council.
And then this one is to, thank you, Mr. Coogan, and then this one is to Councilor Eigenman, the 4.85%. But you were saying that the trend over 10 years in your review of Ethan Manning's numbers were 3.6. Why aren't we looking to give 3.6 to be consistent?
Councilor Eigenman.
It's a good question. It's a good question. What's going to come up later, and I've learned in the last week more about collective bargaining agreements than I ever knew before. A lot of them, I don't think we can revisit, and they are at 4.84. I could be wrong. I may have the wrong data. I've got a lot of numbers, but you're right. 3.6% would be a rational metric as well. It's just that I know for other city employees, not the mayor, they're getting more. They're getting more like 4.84. And I could dive into the budget. Maybe the chairman can correct me. Do I have that right? There's several percentages that are 4.84. That's where I got it.
Councilor Tantar.
So that's a 4.84 0.84% increase from the mayor's salary last year. However, the last time the mayor got a raise was in fiscal year 15. In fiscal year 16, she received 0%. Fiscal year 17, 0%. Fiscal year 18, 0%. Fiscal year 19, 0%. So in the 4 previous fiscal years, the fiscal year 20, she has received 20%. When you look at a department head getting a 4.7% increase this year, they have not been getting 0% increases for the past 4 years. That's the measure that I use is the consumer price index. So I want to say it again, the $85 increase would keep the mayor's salary in real terms, not money terms, in real terms, the same as it was in fiscal year 15. The large increases in the first 5 years, all right? She started out in fiscal year 10, the mayor received a $60,000 stipend, salary. All right, and there were 2 years of 60,000. Then it went to 75. Then it went to 85. Then it went to 91,005, and then it went to 98,000. All right, that's at the beginning. A number of those increases were in her first 4-year terms, the end increases. However, since fiscal year 15, it's been 0% until this proposal. So I think to really look at that 4.8%, that would be a 4.8% total over 5 years. You should divide that by 5. It's less than 1% per year. And I don't think you're going to see that anywhere else. To me, that makes sense. That's logical. It's not logical to give her a 1-year increase because other people are getting that 1-year increase and not see the difference between the previous 4 years.
Thank you. I just, since we're repeating ourselves, I'll do the same. It's not clear to me why you would cherry pick the last 4 or 5 years versus the last 10 versus the last 10. You can pick any time period you want, and everybody has crunched numbers, I'm certain. And if you annualize the increase over the last 10 years, it is 5.31%. So it is outpacing that 4.84 or the COLAs, which will be of great debate and discussion. So there's nothing that makes the last 5 years special as opposed to using the last 10 years. You can look at things any way you like and come to the conclusion you'd like. My point is that you can look at the last 10 years, and if you take into account all, including those 4 years, which assume in fact it is 0%, it is. We all have that. It's available. It's public. You still end up with and by the way, an increase that's outpacing many other departments and the average for the schools over the last 10 years, for example. So there's a million different ways to look at the numbers, and I don't find that to be a sensible way to do so.
Councilor Ackerman.
Yes, in committee, in the budget meetings, that's what I asked for, was a 10-year trend. And I didn't hear any objection from the chair at that time that 10 years was the wrong scheme. So all of the data which was given by the administration, here is their table, is for 10 years, not 4. So I think the 4 years is arbitrary, especially since this particular mayor has been in office for 8 years. So why 4? Why 3? Why not just go back a month? So also, I'm trying to be fair across all of the employees, not cherry pick. I didn't pick 1 year and say, well, in fiscal year 2011, the mayor got a 25% increase. I've averaged it over 10 years. And the same is true of all the employees. And that's where we got the 3.6 normalization. So I'm really puzzled by that statement that there's something magic about the last 4 years. I don't find that persuasive in the least.
Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President. I'm going to rise in support with the suggestion by the councilor from Ward 2. I think part of this is, it's going to be a long night, so this is just our first one. But I do think there is some benefit to the analysis that was done in terms of the 10-year projection. I found that very, very helpful. And what was really amazing to see is that there are some trends that are coming through when you do that type of an analysis. So given that the 10-year average was 5.3%, I like the number we're coming onto. I think that makes sense. I think it's better than the 0. What we started off was cutting up 8,500. But we want to recognize that the mayor salary should have a raise. There has been some trends over time in terms of nothing happening, and I recognize that for those 4 years. But I think this is a good place, and I'm very comfortable, and I think it's logical too. So I hope others will support it. Thank you.
Councilor Tantar.
One other point, this is not repeating myself, most emphatically. The mayor's increase from that $60,000 salary in the early years, we're talking about the first, that was charter mandated.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
That was not? I believe it was.
No, it's false.
Yeah.
One moment.
I was in charge, man. I was on the council at the time, Mr. President, and the mayor was getting $60,000, and I thought she was doing one hell of a job. So I wrote the proposal to upgrade her salary to $85,000, and I had to fight like hell to get 6 councils to vote for it. Then the charter put it to 98. So that's to clarify that. Thank you.
Okay. Further discussion? I'll ask Mr. Coogan if he needs to add any clarification.
Well, I just wanted to clarify where the administration's thought process were, both for the amendment coming forward. So I did provide for you the proposed salaries for fiscal year 20 of all the 10 cities in Essex County that I believe was already mentioned before, and that the city of Newburyport mayor's position, even with this raise, is still the fourth lowest salary in the community. And I know that comparing apples to apples is always a difficult thing, but two things jumped out to me. The ratio of the mayor's salary to a median household income of their constituents, Newburyport has the second lowest ratio. So that means that, in the highest, that the mayor makes in Lynn 2.71 times more than the average median household in Lynn. Whereas in Newburyport, it's 1.18, so the second lowest. The other one, which I want to focus a little bit more on, is the salary of the proposed mayor and all of the mayors in Essex County as a percentage to the average single-family home value. And I bring this up because I do, there's this comparison between real world and government. And in real world, an $83 million budget, a CEO is probably making considerably more than $106,500. We also have a new study from the Merrimack Valley Planning Commission talking about housing and the housing issues that we have in our county and even in our region and also in our city. There's the concept of cost burden. If you're a cost burden, you're spending more than 30% of your annual income on housing, and that's a measurement of whether or not people are able to afford their homes. So when you take into account the average single-family home value for fiscal year 19 in Newburyport, that home value is $595,000. If you divide the $106,500 for the proposed mayor's salary, that equals 18%. So I think that it's a very rare situation where a CEO of an $83 million company can technically not afford to live in the town that they are required to live in. So I think that was a telling number for me. I think that it sounds like there is some support for a raise, but I think that because these raises become few and far between, I think there needs to be a way to index or acknowledge that there's a need to raise the salary.
Unbelievable.
Thank you, Mr. Coogan. Further discussion?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the Ward 6 Council for making my point. Voters in Newburyport voted to provide the salary of the mayor to be $98,000 in 2014. They made that decision right? That was one of the voters. That's what they thought the mayor should earn. It has been fixed in money terms since then. All right? What the original proposal you have before you for the $8,500 increase simply keeps the salary of the mayor in real terms, in purchasing power, the same as the level that the voters voted for.
Thank you. Councilor Vogel, did you have your hand up? No, no you didn't. Councilor Ackerman.
I think the voters know the difference between real dollars and nominal dollars. The charter was not indexed for inflation. If that's what the voters wanted, it would have been indexed. It would have said $98,000 in 2014 or $15. It didn't say that. That's the councilor's view of what it should have said. It's not what it said.
I'd like to move the question.
I think we I think we're ready to vote on this matter. We'll have a vote.
Take a vote on the motion to move.
Excuse me?
You need to take a voice vote on the motion to move. There's a motion to move on the floor.
Yes.
First and second.
So the motion is to move on this matter and to take it up. So that will be the first motion that we're going to take up. The second will be the substance of the proposal itself, being a line item with some amount fixed to it. All those in favor of moving forward, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. Ayes have it.
The council, the chair's in doubt. We'll take it on with,
This is a motion moved by Councilor Zede, seconded by Councilor Khan. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
No.
Councilor Vogel? No. Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earl?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Connell?
no.
Motion carries. We now have a
And now,
motion to cut on the floor, $3,757.
to line item 51101. Is there any further discussion of that? We can't since we're moving forward. We're going to get on it. We'll take a roll call on this matter as well.
It's a motion to cut $3,757. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
No.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Agaman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Council President?
No.
Motion passes.
We're going to proceed to Personnel Services in the Mayor's Office. Line item 51120. Hearing no motion.
Yes, Mr. President.
51.
Sorry. Just trying to get my paperwork together.
51120.
Yep. Motion to cut.
I don't see a hand. Councilor Zede.
Thank you, Mr. President. Motion to cut $10,372.50 from this line.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Councilor Zede.
So this is the discussion we're going to have all night, literally the same discussion we're going to have all night. 10,372 is a 4.84% increase. We have to come to some kind of reckoning on this now, or we are going to be here until 3 days from now, I believe, having the same argument on everything. This is I'm just going to opine with the president's latitude a little bit on the general idea here. The problem I have with this budget, the challenge I have, is that it's not a couple of salary corrections in a couple of places where one can argue the comps or the changes here. It's a wholesale change of almost everything in the entire budget in terms of department heads, assistant department heads, and other staff, excluding those that are labor unions and things like that. And I compiled a list for myself. The average increase is 13% across all of these different lines. I don't know if other counselors have, but I certainly have received my fair share of comments over the past week about this, and people are expecting us to discuss this. So I am using this cut as a discussion, at least, and to get, if we're going to get our hands consistently around 4.84%, or if we want to have the fight on every single line individually and talk about comps and so forth. If this budget is to be believed, we're a city that's destined for, if we don't do this, we're on complete failure. Everybody's going to leave the city tomorrow. It just doesn't seem true. This is my fourth budget, and I can't verbalize to a constituent how you get your head around a 20% increase, or in this line it's a 19.0% increase. I can't explain it. So somebody will have to help me. I sat through the budget hearings. I understand comps. We've had that debate on individual lines from time to time, but we've never had a wholesale correction like this where they're all together there's some 50 lines that are exceeding what I think are sort of normalized increases. And to separate this from the mayor, these are lines that do receive typical increases. One can debate what those are, but these are not lines that go years with 0%. So I'm looking to have some reckoning here in an effort to jumpstart the discussion and get us out of here at a reasonable hour.
What we learned in the budget workshop on this line in particular, the individual who had the position left. We went into the open market and we sought a candidate. The top candidate was selected by the selection committee and then negotiated for the salary. When, every hiring process I've been involved in, And I've been in a number of hiring processes for academics and for deans and provosts. You know, we have a salary structure. Once in that structure, then you go out and you go out there to hire that new economist, and you think you're going to get them for $80,000, and you find out the market's now 110 or 120. You have to meet the market, right? In this case, that is what occurred. And there are a number of cases where that is what occurred, where the city has gone out to hire someone and has met the market. Now, under those circumstances, what we used to do in academia is, because there's a great division of labor, right? In academia, faculty decide who's qualified to be faculty. Administrators don't in higher ed. And so we would pick a candidate. The candidate would then negotiate with the administration to determine the salary. And the administrator, if they couldn't come to an agreement to meet that person's salary, they'd come back to the department and they'd tell us, okay, you're going to go to second best, all right? Or you're going to go to third best or fourth best, all right? Because we can't afford the best out there for the college. And many departments at that point would just say, hey, we're not going to hire. We'll do without the position for a year and go back into the market next year. Maybe we'll go down. But that's the reality. Municipalities operate in markets, all right? Maybe not for elected officials, right? Right? I hope not for elected officials. But for everyone else, we operate in markets, and we have to meet that market rate. That's why comps are important, all right? And it comes down to a negotiation. And if you don't, all right, then you are doing the same thing that happened in academia. You're saying, okay, we're going to settle for something less. So I am opposed to this cut.
Thank you. Further discussion? Councilor Iger. Yeah, I oppose this cut, but my reasons are the same as the last time, which is, again, I looked at the 10-year trend provided by the finance director, and I inflated everything by 3.6%. And then, I'm sorry, I got confused. It's 4.8, which is the standard, not 4.84. So the building inspector, the planning director, there's a whole bunch of, we're going up 4.8. So then I inflated everything by 3.6 for where this position started 10 years ago. And then I said, all right, well, again, I want to be fair, so we'll give him 4.8. And it comes out about the same as what's proposed. So I don't propose, I don't support a cut. I think it's fair and in line with everybody else.
Thank you. Councilor Zede and then Councilor Vogel.
I've already spoken.
Councilor Vogel.
Thank you. Well, so I'll make my stand, since it probably sounds like it's going to go across the board, if you will. So I'm not very good at math. I think I've proven that a number of times. But I did take the management positions across the board here. And I see the total increase of the management positions, as was provided to us, as being 4.2%. So the numbers on the other side of the point I'm not really sure about. It's less than $100,000. So that's across the board in the entire budget. That, if we take our $83 million budget, which includes the enterprise funds, we're talking less than $100,000. So we're talking about 0.12, that's 0.12% that we're arguing about or threatening to argue about until 3 o'clock in the morning. These people that work in this building, I think, have proven beyond a shadow of a doubt, as far as I'm concerned, and I've seen this over the years since I've been involved in this building since 2004, this particular group of people, as I think this particular council, actually, this is the most involved council that I've ever experienced, but the people in this building and the people that work outside of this building for the DPS, et cetera, they work really hard, and we make huge demands of them. All of us, some of us more than others, but all of us make demands of these people, asking them about information, asking them to do this. They work really hard. This is the marketplace out there. I'll tell you right now, as a business owner, go try to hire a barista. You can't, and you don't get one, so you got to get somebody who you hope will have enough sense to understand what it means to steam milk. The marketplace is really tight. The unemployment rate is extremely low. If we tell these people, no, we don't want you, what you're saying to them is go ahead, leave, go away. I also spent 20 years as a union representative in a union position, and I can tell you there's nothing more demoralizing than your organization. There's nothing more demoralizing than your organization cutting your pay or not acknowledging your pay. I went through 20 years. So at the end of the term, TWA was taking money from our check. They called it TAP, the turnaround plan. They were going to take that money that they took from our paycheck and turn the airline around. All they did was tap it out of our pockets. These people work really hard. They deserve to be recognized. They deserve to be on par with the state. We've been given that information. We are on par. We're bringing what is some numbers up that seem considerably high. Yes, they are. But they are no higher than the state averages. They are right there. And that's where we need to be. We are a first-class city. We need to have first-class employees. We need to pay them first-class wages. And we need to recognize them, person by person, of the job that they do with compensation. I had a discussion with someone about saying, well, what happens in downtimes when the marketplace swells and there's plenty of people out there? Well, what do you want to do about that? Do you want to let people go and let the legacy information go and let the experience go and then train people? Is that fiscally responsible to let people go and then pay somebody else to train them, to bring them along? I don't think it is. I think these people deserve our recognition. And we're not going outrageous. It's not an outrageous amount. It's literally $100,000 out of an $83 million budget. That's my stand.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Khan.
Okay, thank you, Council President. So I'm again looking at the 10-year average because I think that's very helpful for me. And my one question is, and it's wonderful we have everyone here, the department heads, which is great to see everyone. And I love you all. You're great, and everyone's doing a good job. So whatever we're doing, it's not easy and it's painful, but there's a method here, and I really appreciate it. I just want to point out a couple of things as I'm looking at these line by line. And we all know, because we are in the front line, we are working with many of you on almost like, I want to say maybe on a daily basis. And so for me, with the chief of staff role, looking at the line item specifically, I just have maybe a clarifying question, because it does say there's a revised fiscal year 2019 of $85,000. So really it's being projected to go up by 2.8% for 2020. And my question, and I guess I'm posing this maybe for another counselor to answer, or maybe the administration, is in terms of reviews, or, because it is a new position, a new hire, is that increase, a 2.8% increase, something that we're doing for COLA adjustment, or is it just a across-the-board increase, or is that something maybe we would do not in 2020 but 2021? So I guess I'm wondering why, when we just kind of hired someone and we have that $85,000, which was an increase from our last budget that we approved, why would we bump it up again without having a full year of service? So I just have that question more just from a general
I'll ask Mr. Manning to approach the microphone. The finance director.
So if I could clarify on that. We did hire in the staff person at $85,000 earlier in the fiscal year. So it's a 2% cost of living increase. It's a budgetary impact of 2.8% because of the 2 extra days in FY20. So it was a cost of living increase. Okay.
Thank you.
Additional points. Councilor Devlin, then Councilor Genta.
Yeah, I just want to make sure, I think my sister councilor at large has is around the same idea that I am at, which is, if we're going to do this, we should use some consistent numbers, and I'm a little confused. The first question I would have is this $10,000 cut supposed to bring it down to the 4.8%? I got roughly, I think I was using 3.8%, and I went to law school to avoid math. So, but I got around $800, $900 that I would have to cut to make this make sense, and it just didn't seem worth it to me at that point. And I have enjoyed Mr. Coogan's time here. I think he has worked hard. He's come up with some interesting arguments, like he did on the median household income one for the mayor. That was a very creative argument, look, in an honest, forthright way, and I really do appreciate that. So I'm just trying to figure out where we're talking about. It sounds like Counselor from Ward 2 is saying this doesn't fit in his 4.8, and so maybe I'm asking this from the Counselor from Ward 1.
Before we go to Councillor Gent, I just might advise the councillors to speak about funding positions and not identifying or pointing or calling out any individuals. They all deserve the respect of some professional distance from the positions that are being judged in relation to the service that position provides to the taxpayers of the city. Councillor Genta, you are next up.
Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah, I support the 4.8 increase, and that's the whole point here, is it's an increase. We're talking about giving people raises here. The difference is I've been demolished with emails, no surprise from my ward, and it's really hard for me to tell people that I okayed a 19% increase, because I can guarantee you there's going to be very few people in my ward that will see a salary increase like that this year. It is, the position is newly filled, so we haven't got through a full year yet. I think everybody in City Hall works really hard, and I appreciate working with everybody, and I intend on giving everybody a raise here tonight. The point is just looking at the percentages, and I think a 5% raise is very appropriate for a newly filled position, and next year that might be added on to, but an 18.96% raise, I just can't work with that number.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Zede and then Councillor Shand.
I just wanted to answer the at-large council's question. I think the discrepancy in the number is that last year, the chief of staff also received a $10,000 stipend for being the procurement agent. That position, as I'm sure we will debate in several hours, has been moved to a different place. So that's why the FY19 budget was $73,440. The proposed this year is $87,367, and that's where the cut comes from. So I wanted to answer that question. Second is, I think a couple of comments made by my colleagues highlight some of the challenges. I agree with this stinks. I mean, I've been dreading this meeting since we started the budget process and I first cracked the book. I think it's terrible that we're in this position. But the Ward 4 councilor talked about the hiring process, and it's actually an interesting backstop. When he says we went out to the market, we didn't do anything in this room. We don't. We sit here and we basically pass budgets. The administration goes out to the hiring market and decided that they would like to spend more than what was budgeted. And through a little bit of budget maneuvering, I'll call it, they bank some money over time when a person leaves a position for a few months and uses that to fund the position. And then this is the outcome, is that we now have to sit in this room and argue about this. The last budget the city council approved for this position was $73,440. You cannot bury the change by saying it was a mid-year change, or we went to the market, or we got this. None of those things came to this room. None of those things were discussed. This is our opportunity. We're responding in a timely a fashion as we can. I don't know any other real opportunity for us to do this, especially in the case of this position. So I wanted to tell them that. And the last thing is, it's demoralizing for a member of the board of directors of a company to have to sit here and do this as well. So I want people to understand that it's not like this is like some weird pleasure anybody gets out of this nonsense. This stinks. But we are where we are tonight because of the process we followed to this point, and this is not the only line where that comes up. So when you say we can't have the best or whatever, had we had that bite at the apple, we may have decided, you know what, we can't have the best on this because we want the best of something else. And sometimes that to me is the core of what we do in this room. We're supposed to be prioritizing. So I hope I've answered the numbers question and responded to a couple of comments.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Shand.
So I do appreciate the comment from my fellow councillor to my right about going out to the marketplace. This position was filled last year at $85,000. It's not an 18% raise for this position right now. It is a 2.78% position, 2.78% raise right now, not 18.1.
Thank you. Further comments, discussion? Councillor Hagerman.
Yes. Again, context. So I oppose cutting it as much as this. But again, I want to stick up for the rationale of something that's consistent with a 3.6% increase. And I want to highlight from some of the counselors that spoke earlier that that's actually more generous than if I had gone strictly by the budget. I want to point the attention to pages 252 and 253. The revenue forecast, total revenue, there was talk about our total budget and how this is an infinitesimal proportion of that budget. But you have to understand, in the projections that Ethan Manning does, he has to go forward 10 years. I've been talking about going back 10 years. Revenue is only projected to go up 3.4% a year. So every time that we do an extraordinary increase in anything and we say, well, forget the 3.4, we're going to do something else, there needs to be justification for it. And I think the counselor from Ward 1 made the point, there are choices we make. So for example, we've made a choice on the school budget. The school budget is coming in, I think, at a 3.4% increase, roughly. I'm not sure. Others will know better. Not 18%, not 10%. And that's a policy decision. I also point out there are expenditure projections that are baked into this. So the expenditure projection, for example, for general administration, which we're still on, for the next 10 years, which includes all salaries, is only 2% a year. Excuse me, 2.3. 2.3. I'm pushing 3.6. I oppose that motion. Thank you. Thank you.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes, could I ask the finance director, please, to indicate how you came up with those percentage increases in the, for the revenue stream and the expenditure stream?
Yeah, so those long-range forecasts we use to build conservative estimates for the city going out. I'd say we're both conservative on what we expect to take in and what we expect to spend. Those increases are driven based on historicals for the most part, except for revenue where there might be other things going on that impact the numbers. But for the expenses, particular personnel services, I've pretty much used the CPI index to just go out 10 years because it's such a long period of time. That was as conservative as I could be.
Thank you. Councilor Tantar again.
Follow up on that.
And so just to be clear, what we mean by conservative is we go low on the anticipated revenue, all right? And we go relatively high on expenditures, right? I mean, that's what we do, right? And so that way, we're sure that when we write a budget, we have sufficient funds to finance it. So I don't know.
I believe we're getting close on this one. Is there anyone who has not yet spoken who wishes to chime in? Hearing none, I'll identify Councilor Zede
My
for the
last
fourth
comment
bite
on
of the
this,
apple.
I do have to respond to the Ward 3 counselor. If you're going to do budget, if you're going to do increases based on the revised budget in the middle of the year, then what you're saying is the administration can change the salary for any position mid-year, and you just do the revenue, you do the change off of that, and it seems smaller. The last number that passed through this room was 73,440. So I get it. We can argue that we went out to the market. I still take dissatisfaction to the term "we" because I don't know what other offers came in. I don't know who else applied. That I don't want to know. It's not really our purview. What I do know, what is our purview, is the amount in that line. So that's very important to me. And the last thing I would say is I'm not sure how we got off on the revenue and expenditure, so I'll hold off on that one. It was, I don't know. I have things I could say, but maybe it's better for another time. So.
I believe we've talked it through. I would ask for a roll call vote.
This is a motion on line item 51120 to cut $10,372.50, correct?
Correct.
It should be a 4.8.
Councilor Khan,
No.
Councilor Shan. I'm sorry, Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tantar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin. Councilor Earls.
No.
Councilor Eigenman.
No.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Councilor Connell.
No.
Motion fails.
Next line item. 51126. Hearing no motion, we'll move on. 51501. 51502.
Yep, 515.
I'm sorry, I didn't see a hand. You're going to have to be quicker than that. Okay, whose hand is up? Counselor Tonto.
Yeah, may I suggest that you ask if there are any other changes on this page?
Yes.
So that we can move on.
Are there any others on this page? Counselor Ivan.
Yeah, I'll take them together because they're all related. So the items that I propose are travel allowance 51501, mayor's expense 51502, and miscellaneous expense 57801. When we get to the next page, and when I'm proposing are modest cuts to each one. What came out during the hearing is that there's some overlap in these funds, and it's just not very, it's kind of a grab bag of expenses. And I think what we can do is, we have a pretty healthy general, free cash every year. If, there's a shortage, they can always come back. But I would propose, instead of just assuming that mayor's expenses would be 3,000, miscellaneous expenses another 16, and travel allowance 51,500, that comes to $24,100 right there. We trim those a little bit. Again, we're trying to be judicious here. We're trying to be judicious. I would cut 1,100 to make travel allowance $4,000. I cut 1,000 from the mayor's expenses, just make it 2,000. I would reduce the miscellaneous expense to 10,000. And again, we'll get to it on the next page, but remember that general training, which covers many of the same things, is proposed at 30,000.
Could you do?
Yeah, we're kind of.
You're going to have to summarize it again for the clerk.
Just clear it again.
Go by budget.
Counselors, please.
501, such a cut.
Let me just see if the clerk has that straight, because he's keeping the official record.
I saw 3 cuts, 51501 by 1,000?
1,100.
100?
No, 1,100.
1,100.
1,100.
Down to 4,000.
Yep.
I had 3,000 reduced to 2,000 on mayor's expense.
Yep.
And I had miscellaneous expense to 10,000 from 16,000, correct?
That's correct.
And it was a motion to cut all 3 collectively.
Second.
And it has been seconded. Discussion.
51501. No, they're not salary lines.
This is a motion to cut 3 line items. 501, travel allowance by $1,100 to $4,000. 502, mayor's expense by 1,000 to 2,000 from 3,000. And the miscellaneous expense to 10,000 from 16,000.
To 10,000? Or you want to cut 10,000?
Counselor Tantar.
Yeah, could I ask the finance director for year-to-dates on those?
Sure. But if I could just clarify the 51501 and the 51502, those are fixed allowances that are paid to the mayor's compensation. The 5,100 is $425 a month for travel reimbursement, which is the same travel reimbursement that's offered to other department heads who use their vehicle for business. And the $3,000 mayor's expense is per the code. It's written right into the Code of Ordinances. So those two are not variable. It's a fixed amount. So we're each payroll that's getting paid out. However, with the 57801 mayor's miscellaneous expense, we have spent $10,532 to date, or approximately 66% of the line item.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Further discussion? Further discussion? Counselor Iger, I'm sorry, Counselor Zede had his hand up.
I just, as a follow-up for the finance director, I did remark the 51502, the $3,000 I believe is prescribed. You're right, it's either in the charter or in the ordinances. But what was the 5,100 from what? What contract? You said it's contractual. What contract is that? Or how would that have been ratified?
No, sorry, I misspoke if I said it was contractual.
Okay.
However, it's a payroll, it's paid to her through payroll, essentially. it's a fixed $425 a month. We used to reimburse the mayor as they traveled and for gas or whatnot. It just really wasn't practical. So therefore, she does receive the $425 per month that the other department heads receive. However, that is not written into the code as is the $3,000 statement.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes. Just to clarify, there is no contract with the mayor, just like there's no contract with the city council. So that may be a tradition, but what I'm trying to observe for everybody is that there's overlap. I asked for an itemization of the item in the next page, and the mayor has sought reimbursement for parking, for example, for mileage. That's what I'm trying to get at. So basically, it's just there's this extra stuff. You got to add it all up. That's all I'm saying. Thank you.
Councilor Devlin.
Yeah, this is where I had sort of my first hesitation, is that there was some overlap. So in 57801, there was miscellaneous expenses, and it was like every day, the answer was every day City Hall needs the kitchen that was done upstairs, inspection of elevators, City Hall, if they need a desk, so it's a budget contingency, and that felt a little squishy to me. If we're gonna do renovations upstairs to the kitchen in the banquet room, I'd prefer, if it comes before us and you need a free cash allowance, that's a better place to discuss that, I think. Although I understand the need for some unexpected expenses, and it does, there was a list of things from the next page, which was, I think it was 54301, which is one that either I'll propose or maybe somebody, it sounds like Councilor Argument will as well, and that had some things in there that sounded like they fit into these categories as well. So,
thank you, Councilor.
and, I did want to say one last thing to the idea that, and I hear the idea, but we are dealing, I think it's been said, but we are dealing with nickeling, diming, and that's what we're left with. But great fortunes have been made on people who counted their pennies. If you ever read a book about a very successful and wealthy person, it's because they counted every dime. And unfortunately, or fortunately, that is actually our main role here, and that's what we're here to do. So we might be quibbling over $100,000. If you take that $100,000, it might be another world language teacher at the middle school, which has been a goal of people. More AP classes at the high school, which has been a goal of people, certainly in my demographic. So, thank you.
Further discussion? Councilor O'Brien.
Yep, on miscellaneous expense, I didn't attend the budget hearing due to circumstances beyond my control, but what line item would the boat trip that the department heads took, where would that come out of? That come out of anything here?
Mr. Manning?
Could you clarify?
The boat trip that the department heads go in June, July?
Oh, the boat trip?
Yeah.
I do not believe there are any city expenses related to that.
So where would that, who paid for that?
It was free.
It was free.
I believe so.
So that was free.
And the mayor provided any expenses out of pocket.
Out of pocket? Through a credit card or whatever?
No, she literally brought the items. Nothing was charged to the city.
Well, I tend to disagree, but
It wasn't.
If this was free, that means if you looked at the ninth wave before it went out of business, the thing to go on was $1,500. So if they gave it to you for free, everyone that went on it was in violation of the Ethics Commission. Hope you reported it.
I would disagree with that.
No, I wouldn't, because I talked to them.
It was the afternoon, maybe an hour. Anyways, I won't comment on that.
Further discussion?
Unbelievable.
I'm going to ask the clerk to summarize the proposal again.
Again, it's a motion for three cuts, three line items. 57,801, 210,000, 51,501, 24,000, 51,502, 2,000. First and second. Roll call, Mr. President.
Yes, please.
Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tantar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zeeb.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
No.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Council President.
No.
Motion fails.
Anything under legal on this page?
No.
Okay, we've gotten through one page. General Administration, page 51. Does anyone have any proposals to cut any of the items on this page?
Yes, I do.
Go ahead.
Someone's got to get a hand up. Who's going to be? Councilor Eigenman.
Okay, motion to cut item 52403, public restrooms, $15,000 cut. Second.
So you're going to zero that one out?
Yes, I am.
Was there a second?
Yes, Mr.
Councilor
President.
Zede. Discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
Yes, during the workshops, I asked about these and was told that actually these are located in certain real estate assets. So there's a bathroom at the parking garage, there's a bathroom at the harbor master. I've never heard of, splitting off the cost from the real estate. It should be part of their budget. So if we have a harbor master has a budget, they should be paying for not only their own private bathrooms, but it was a condition of approval under Chapter 91 of the Mass General Laws that they have a public restroom. So I don't know why it's being thrown into the general administration. I think that leads to mischief because we're not able to track it properly about what really is the cost of our harbor master. Same is true of the parking garage. I was told that part of this is for the parking garage. It should be in the parking garage budget. I'm not saying we shouldn't clean the bathrooms, but it really doesn't belong here. If you hide it in here, we're not going to be able to track it properly. That's why I'm making the cut. I'm not allowed to add, I can only cut.
Further discussion? Hearing none, I'll take a voice vote on this matter. All those in favor of cutting line item 52403 from $15,000 to zero regarding public restrooms, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The ayes have it.
In the interest of time, I'll just give you my...
Is there any other item on this page, 51?
Yes, just three more. So I talked about already, item 53004 is proposed at $30,000. I propose to cut it to $20,000. Supplies, office, 54200, trying to tighten that up from $8,000 to $7,000.
The motion is to cut $10,000 out of 53004.
Yes.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second for discussion. Discussion of this matter. Hearing none. All those in favor, say aye.
No, Mr. President.
Jesus, you can't see.
We had an opportunity to discuss. Is there any discussion?
Yes.
Then, raise your hand. Councilor
Yeah, I did
Eigenman.
raise my hand. Again, it didn't carry the day previously, but again, to give you the data, I'm working off the data provided by the administration. So for example, all of the departments have their own travel and training budgets. So this is on top of that. I'm not proposing to cut it to zero. I'm trying to get it under control to 20,000. And it included, just for example, in fiscal year 2018, the mayor, who had all those other accounts that I just tried to cut and we couldn't, took $3,666 on mileage, which is not assigned to anybody. So I don't know whose mileage it is, just mileage, even though we give out stipends. It's in almost everybody's deal. Last year, it was very high. It was almost $6,000. More examples. The police, who we'll get to the police budget, has very generous training and so on. $16,322 they spent from this line item in fiscal year 18, and last year, to date, was $13,000. I'm just trying to get it under control. It seems like it's a bit too loosey-goosey to $20,000.
Further discussion. I'm going to ask Mr. Coogan to approach and speak to this item.
I want to jump up now before we lose any more toilet paper. So, the difference between the travel items in this budget versus the what was the travel, the other funding from the other budgets. Those are more, those are the contractual stipends that are provided to employees for trainings that are very specific to their jobs. For instance, for the water treatment plant, the wastewater treatment plant, those are very specific trainings that are required in order for those positions to fulfill and do their jobs. This budget is for additional trainings that don't fall into that category for departments that don't have those contractual stipends, but for trainings and travel and trainings for those other departments is and it is a catch-all in this budget. So I just wanted to make that clear that they're two separate there's different types of training that our employees do. Some of them are for the job themselves, and others are for various other reasons.
Thank you. Further discussion? I'll ask for a roll call on this matter.
For clarification, it's 53004, it's being cut to $20,000, so you're cutting 10.
$10,000 reduction.
Okay.
Correct.
Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tantar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Council President.
No. I believe the motion passes.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Any other items on this page? Page 51.
I'll yield. Go ahead. Yeah, I have two more.
I'm looking for a hand.
Go for it. Raise your hand.
Councilor Eigenman.
Okay, I did two more. We'll do them together so you can vote them down together. 54200 is supplies. Again, you can always come back. You can always come back. So you're not going to go without toilet paper. That's ridiculous. Proposed is 8,000. I'm just saying, get it under control. 7,000. City Hall miscellaneous grab bag 54301 is proposed at 1,500. Let's just make it 1,000. So that's it. That's my proposal.
Second. Moved and seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
No.
No.
The ayes have it. Anything else on page 51?
No.
'57. City Clerk's Department. Watch out here. Are there any proposed amendments to any of the items on page 57? I see one hand up. Councilor Junta.
I just sort of wanted to make a point of order on this one because this is unusual that the clerk, and just so everybody knows, the clerk and I had this conversation earlier today, so this is no surprise to him. The clerk is an employee of the city council, and he's under contract with the city council. He is our employee, and we have a contract with him. And it is unusual that the mayor put an increase in pay in the budget, which would seem to be in contradiction to what we have right now in our contract. Now, as a council, if we chose to open up the council, the contract and redid it, then that would be fine. But if we were to vote on this tonight, we may be approving money, but it would be money that's not in his contract. So that is a problem. So to me, I think we have the cart before the horse. If this is something that we want to do as a council, we should reopen his contract and we should do this. But it shouldn't be done the way that it's being done right now. So I'm getting strange looks, but we do have a contract and it does have a number on it. And that contract is in effect and has not ended.
Councilor Tantar.
So passing this doesn't change the contract. So this just makes it set aside the funds. So if we were to change the contract, the funds are already there. They have to be taken from somewhere else. If we don't change the contract, funds go into the capital.
Councilor Junta.
We would do, if we were to redo the contract, then obviously there would be a special budget that would come into us for funding that. This is, to my knowledge, I don't believe we've ever done this before. Some folks that have been on the council in the past can let me know. I've never seen it done like this in my 6 years.
Councillor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. I guess I don't know why this didn't come up during the budget hearing. So having set, it did? And then what was our deliberation on it? Because, oh, sorry. But I remember our conversation on this, but I didn't remember that being an issue that we were going to go back and redo the contract. So maybe you could clarify what our outcome was.
Thank you.
No, that's true. We did not discuss that we'd have to do the contract. We discussed how this number was arrived at. And we asked the city clerk for an explanation. And we asked all the department heads who came in for an explanation for that. And we got one. But I think technically you would have to rewrite a contract.
Sorry, can I finish my
Follow, and then Councilor Hogan.
I guess my point is, there's a reason we had our budget hearings was to talk about all this. So I guess I wish that came up earlier so we could have pursued, as opposed to hearing about it now. That's what I just wanted to add that.
Thank you. Councilor Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just wondering if we might get a little clarification from Ethan. Is that possible? Thank you.
Mr. Manning, Finance Director.
I guess my commentary would be that the mayor is proposing this increase, recommending this increase. But yes, there would need to be a revision to the city clerk's contract for it to take effect.
Thank you. Councilor Zede. I'm sorry, Councilor O'Brien.
Yeah. I probably wrote that contract with the city clerk and in discussion with him, then went to the mayor and suggested this is what the city clerk and I agreed upon. But that contract his duties have changed quite a bit, you know. The parking garage come in, he's spending a lot of time in parking, so whatever, you know, so you would have to probably open the contract and change it, because his hours might have changed, I don't know, with the duties, you know, that the parking garage take, but it was done by myself, then agreed by the council, and then proposed to the mayor, this is what we agreed upon. You know, the mayor always said that, you know, the council is in charge of the city clerk, you know, in all my terms, my 19 years, so. Thank you.
I'm tempted to respond. I think I can't right now. Councilor Zede.
So I'm not going to talk about that because, you know, whether the money chases the contract or the contract chases the money is perhaps a question for a different day on this one. But I think we're losing sight of the fact that we have a 21% increase in this line for this position. And it seems, reading the room, that there's been some support for annualizing a 3.6 increase over 10 years, that has been a methodology that some seem to like, as opposed to going with the 4.84 number. So I will propose a cut of $8,118, which will bring it in line with that 3.6 average over 10 years. So the proposed is 91,511. It would become 83,393. And I would just comment that, you know, the parking is another discussion. Don't worry, that's coming up. And there's much to debate there as well. But that is a proposal, that is an amendment.
Seconded.
Can we hear those numbers again? That was
Sorry.
really quick.
Sorry. The cut is $8,118. Okay. The proposal is $91,511. With that cut, it would become $83,393.
Discussion with that proposal.
Yes, sir. With a second from the Ward 2 Councilor.
Councilor Eigenman seconded, correct?
Yes.
Mm-hmm. Discussion, Councilor Eigenman.
Well, that took the words out of my mouth. I did the same calculation. I got 3.6 annualized, and that's what it comes to. So it's not that there won't be a raise, it's just that it'll be a smaller raise.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call. Councilor Tantar.
This is the last time we're going to do this. Using the average increase in the state of Massachusetts over the past 10 years as a measure doesn't make any sense to me. You know, again, we are in the 10th year of an economic recovery. There was a very slow recovery. First years of that, actually up until last 2 years, wages and salaries have have been basically flat in real terms. That's how economists look at this stuff. Only very recently, in the last 2 years, have wages and salaries outpacing the rate of inflation, and we're looking forward here. And I've never seen that measure used before. It doesn't make sense to me. The consumer price index makes sense, or employment cost index that makes sense, but so if you guys want to do it, you do it, but I'm not going to vote for it, because it's illogical from my perspective.
Councilor Zede?
I just want to state a simple couple numbers. The proposed increase is 21%, 20.7, 21%. This cut will leave the increase at 10%. How many viewers out there are getting 10%? CPI, Mass State Average, you tell me. I mean, this is what we have to go back and justify. This is still a 10% raise. So while the comments are generally like, you guys are monsters for making these cuts, this is a 10% raise. I don't know many people that are getting that anywhere. And so I think it's a perfectly fair cut to make.
Councilor Devlin?
I am troubled by the idea that it's being suggested that we use the CPI, because what have we been doing on the years that there have been no raises? Has the administration fallen asleep at the wheel? Have we fallen asleep at the wheel? I'm confused why this is an issue now, but it wasn't, 4 years ago or 3 years ago, when we were 7 years into an the largest economic recovery in the history of the United States, or the longest now. So I'm confused about why we're now concerned. I've been in now, this is my third budget, and this is the first time that I'm hearing this, that we're going to tie it. Is this setting a precedent for our union contracts? We're going to tie everything into the CPI? Isn't it COLA?
COLA.
Yeah, isn't it COLA, which is like 2%? So I'm confused. I'm confused by the CPI, and I haven't heard the argument before, so it seems like an odd measurement that we're pulling out now.
Let's move forward. Councilor Tantar?
COLA increases in the context of bargaining, are the result of the exchange between buyers and sellers. They generally tend toward CPI. That's what they tend toward. Not across the board, because in some sectors of the economy we have shortages of certain individuals. All right, when you have bottlenecks and shortages, that is, the supply of that particular skill doesn't match the demand, or the demand outpaces the supply, those are going to increase faster. And then that's when you have adjustments to salaries over and above the COLA. But COLA basically, it always tries to project or predict what the rate of inflation will be in order to keep salaries in real terms at least constant. So your workers can at least buy what they were able to buy the year before.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a roll call on this proposal. Could we summarize the proposal, please? I believe
line
it's a
item
cut
5110.
of 81,118.
Yes, it's a cut of 8,118. Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
No.
Councilor Vogel?
No.
Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor President?
No.
Motion passes.
I have another cut, Mr. President.
Additional cuts on page 57. Councilor Zede.
Yep, motion to cut under City Council 51101.
Second.
Cut 33,000.
Second.
Third.
I'm sorry, could
Yeah,
you?
It's under city, it's on the bottom half of the page. There's another 51101. Yeah, it's the same.
Personnel Services.
Yes.
City Council.
Yes.
Second.
What was the proposal again, Councilor? I missed it.
33.
Cut of 33,000.
Cut of 33,000. Discussion, is there a second?
I second, yep.
Discussion, Counselor Zede.
Yeah, I opposed even sending the ordinance to consider city council raises to committee. I think you have to be consistent, and I don't see a need for the council to get a raise. There's a lot of discussion we can have about this. Perhaps we'll have it with the ordinance as far as attracting people to run for council. How do you have a good council? I can hear the CPI argument coming again, but this is a stipend just for the council. It's dry cleaning and gas money. It's so that anybody could run and be on it. I think $5,000 is sufficient. I'm not really concerned with what it could buy 10 years ago and what it can buy today. I still think it's a fair amount, and I think the council should take a zero. I think that is the appropriate thing to do, and I'll be fighting it every step of the way, whether I get it here or it doesn't come here and I get it in the ordinance. I would never put my name on this. Thank you.
Thank you. Counselor Devlin.
Yeah, I mean,
it got revised.
I hope we're not going to get the CBI argument, but we heard some comps in the budget hearing, and it really doesn't matter if some of the larger cities were getting more money. But
I was talking about what's in the book.
I was too.
Excuse me.
I'm sorry.
some of the larger cities were getting more money, but for us, I think the argument for some positions are we need to attract better candidates. Doubling this to $10,000, first of all, I don't think they have to attract better candidates, but no. But doubling this to $10,000 is not going to make or break someone and make them say, yeah, man, I'm going to go run for this. This is awesome. It's worth every penny. So it's $33,000 that I'd rather put someplace, frankly, I'd rather put to the schools, so.
That's right.
Counselor Tantar, and then Counselor Eigenmann.
I'm going to suggest that we zero this out completely, that we cut. So I'm going to oppose your motion. I'm going to propose that we cut $67,200 from this proposed budget, and that city councilors take a zero salary. Put your mouth, we were.
The new one.
The new one. Oh, yeah, that's right. No,
So
I'll cut
89.
whatever the new one is. The zero?
89.
Counselor Eigenmann, you had your hand up, did you withdraw?
I'll second
I
that.
said a question.
No, it's not a motion. I'm speaking against the motion.
Counselor Eigenmann, did you?
Yeah, I just trying to understand the 33. So you'd cut 6720, 200 to 47? No.
May I clarify, Mr. President?
Yeah.
I apologize, I meant to say this. There was a revised version that was given out at the same time that the mayor revised the proposal.
I see it.
So
Sorry, never mind.
FY19 was 56, and 89 is the new, and so 33 is the cut. And I think we should vote on this, and I'll second the Ward 4 councilor's motion.
We have one motion on the floor. What is the motion, Mr. Clerk?
The motion is 51101, salary city council, to strike 33,000 from the revised version of 89,000.
Thank you.
That, yes. And then,
We'll take a roll call on this matter.
Again, this is a motion to strike 33,000 from the 89,000 on that line item for city council. Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yep.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Eigenmann.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
Council President.
No.
2 noes, motion passes. That line item is now reduced by
56.
33,000.
Thank you.
66.
Counselor Tantar, do you have an item?
56, excuse me, 56.
Is there a second? Counselor Zede, second. A discussion?
No, Vogel seconded it.
Vogel, second. I saw the hand, I didn't see it on this side, I apologize.
Yeah.
Vogel, seconded. Discussion? Hearing none. We'll take a roll call on this one.
This is a motion to reduce 5100 from the now standing 56,000 to 0. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Yes. Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor Shan. I'm sorry, Councilor O'Brien.
No.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tantar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
Yes.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
No.
Councilor Earls.
No.
Councilor Eigenmann.
No.
Councilor Junta.
No.
Councilor Connell.
No.
Motion fails.
Thank you. Is there any other motions relative to page 57. Page 59. I'm sorry, 58. I missed a couple. In there. 58. 59.
Yes, Mr. President.
Councilor Z.
I'd like to make a motion to cut line 51100 by 6165.
Second.
And the second was Councilor Devlin, I believe?
No, O'Brien.
O'Brien, I'm sorry. Discussion.
110.
Councilor Z.
Yeah, so this is first in a couple cuts I want to make to the parking. First thing is I just want to give you the high level. So as you know, we made a lot of changes to the parking system, and I'm not referring to building the parking garage. I mean the finances. We dispensed with a revolving fund. We now have a receipts reserve for appropriation. We're folding the revenues from the garage and the parking system in general into the general fund. That's shown, I think, on page 20. And then the expenses for that parking system are shown primarily, although not entirely here. There's also some in debt service for it. And then as we'll talk about in other departments, it's kind of feathered out into different things. I'm really concerned about where this whole parking thing is going. This is an increased line of 18.6% here, so I'm trying to bring that in line consistent with the other discussions we've had. Just to be clear, a 6165 cut does not mean a negative. It does not mean a cut to anybody's salary. It still means a raise. I apologize, I don't have the exact number off the top of my sheet here that I built for myself, but it's an effort to bring it more in line with what it is today until we can get a better handle on what the revenues are going to be, what the expenses are going to be, and what it's going to take to manage this system. So I hope that you will support it and other ones that I plan to make as well.
Can we have those numbers again?
Thank you. Further discussion?
I was asked for the numbers again.
Numbers again.
Would the clerk read the numbers, please?
We're talking about 51100.
Yes.
Salary for clerk and the admins, reducing the change of 6,345
to cutting the line by 6165.
6165.
So that changed by 6160?
Correct. The proposed is 4350, and the result will be 34185.
What would be the percentage?
Sorry. What time is it? All right, it's 10:05. The starting number, the proposed budget, okay, is FY20 proposed. What did I do here? Is this
30.
Yeah, I put the wrong number in, which is why. So proposed is 40,530, and the cut should be 6345, which brings it back to where it was, and basically a level from 2019.
Does the clerk have that?
Not 6165, 6345.
Okay, I think that was the mistake. You
Yes, that's
misspoke the
my
first time
mistake.
around.
I did.
Yes.
Sorry.
Okay. Does the clerk have that?
So are you reducing that back to 34,185?
Okay, Mr. Junta. I'm sorry. One moment, please. Let me consult with the clerk. Do you understand what we're doing?
It is the assistant city clerk's stipend raise negotiated 3-4, I don't know how many months ago with the mayor.
Let me get some clarification. Councilor Junta, would you yield for a moment for some clarification from the finance director? Yep. Or from Mr. Coogan, who's appropriate?
You'll recall we came in with a transfer for this a few months back to reflect actual expenditures. This was the FY19 was the first attempt at putting together a parking budget. We did our best effort, but it was not perfect. The FY19 revised is $39,185, which is required to fund contractual stipends for the parking program that have been agreed upon. So the $40,529.70 is simply a 2% COLA on top of the revised.
Thank you. And well, while you're up, Ethan, just a second. Are there questions you'd like to ask of the finance director? Any member? Councilor Eigenman.
Yeah, no, I just want to understand, so who's the human being that is paid out of that?
I'm going to, it's a position. as a policy matter, I think it's appropriate to discuss positions
You're
and
not
the services they provide, and not attach faces or names.
Is it the parking clerk or somebody else? Who gets the money?
Yes, it's the assistant clerk.
The
that you
assistant
know.
clerk. Thank you.
Thank you.
Not all of it, but
Yeah.
90% of it, I think.
Right, so the whole, if you're looking at the whole 40,529.70, that's divided by the entire parking clerk administrative staff.
So it doesn't include the parking clerk himself?
Yes, part of the clerk's salary is funded, and that's in this contract.
The increase is the assistant clerk.
Yes, the increase
Which
that
has
you're
been in
seeing-
effect for how many months?
Correct. Yeah, that was early, that was very early in the fiscal year.
And may I? The assistant clerk has a collective bargaining agreement.
That's correct.
And the clerk does not.
They say it's 39
Correct?
now.
Yeah.
It's revised.
Yes,
mid-year.
it's contractual. It's contractual.
Got it.
They should have that here.
Thank you, Councilor Devlin.
So you said the 2019 budget was a first crack and it was an estimate. Why didn't we know about the contractual stipends?
Yeah, it should be more than, the 34 is too low. It does not.
That's too low, yeah.
It does not include the assistant clerk's increase.
Right. If I could, the
Not
assistant
18%.
clerk's increase was not factored into the 34,185. It should have been. That was a mistake that we made in recommending the budget. So that's why we came in with the revision.
We already did this.
Yes.
Does that answer your question, Councilor Devlin? It does, thank you. Thank you. Further discussion?
What is the
Hearing none,
right figure?
we'll take a roll call on this matter.
Okay, this is a motion to cut by $6,340.
What's the regular budget?
No, we're taking a roll call. We call for the roll.
What's the motion to cut? Councilor Khan?
No.
Councilor O'Brien?
No.
Councilor Shan?
No.
Councilor Tontar? Councilor Vogel? Councilor Zede?
Yes.
Councilor Devlin?
No.
Councilor Earls?
No.
Councilor Agaman?
No.
Councilor Junta?
No.
Councilor O'Connell?
No. Are there other items on page 59 members would like to take up? Yeah, Councilor Zede, I thought I saw
Motion to
your
cut
hand.
2,500 from 54200, parking, office supplies.
54200, and the motion again is to take how much out?
2,500, Mr. President.
Which would leave 1400 in the account. Is there a second?
Second.
I believe Councilor O'Brien is the second? I missed that. Discussion, Councilor Zede.
So we just had a transfer that maybe is the same one people are referring to, I don't know. I was referring to whether we approved the contract or not, which is a running theme, maybe we can talk about that more later, but there was opposition on this council to moving into the office space in the garage, which was previously slated for the RTA. This is just a continuation of that. We have not resolved that question, and that's the reason I'm asking for your support on this.
Thank you. Further discussion?
Councilor, if I might, so the cut was?
2,500.
Okay,
was the
the
cut.
increase.
Leaving 1400 in the account.
Correct.
Everyone understands this? All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion passes.
Motion passes. Anything else on page 59? No. We move on to page 70, if I'm not mistaken.
64 would be better.
I am mistaken.
Yeah, very much so.
Information technology. Mark almost had a heart attack. Okay, page 64. Any proposals to cut? Well, then I was right. Page 70. Inadvertently, but. Any recommendations to cut in the auditor's office, page 70? 01-135. Councilor Zede.
May I make a comment, or is it only for cuts?
Just for cuts, please.
Okay, motion to cut 51101 by $1.
Second for discussion.
Really?
Yes, Mr. President, please.
It's seconded. Discussion. Councilor Zede.
I'm just going to make this comment once. I'm not happy about 11% raises. I'm just going to say it, and I'm not going to motion anymore unless it's on the 3.6 line. But there's a 10.4% increase here, and there's a 60% increase in 51104. I understand that there are other factors with 51104 in shifting positions, but a job that used to cost 10 grand has basically double and a half. So I just want to express my discontent, and that's all. And I'll withdraw my motion.
Thank you,
Save
Counselor.
you the trouble.
Further cuts to page 70. Hearing none, we'll proceed. This page left intentionally blank to page 76. Cuts to page 76, the Assessor's Department.
We're good. Move on.
Hearing none,
82.
go home, Jill. Page 82.
Not supposed to name names, come on now.
Page 82. Treasurer's Department. Page 87, Emergency Management. Page 94, Fire Department, continued on page 95. Oh, we're making some headway now. Page 104, Police Department. Page 105, continuation of Police Department. Any cuts? Page 112, Health Department. Page 113, Animal Control. I'm sorry, Councilor Devlin, did you have your hand up?
No, scratch
Scratch his head.
Okay, that happens sometimes. Page 113, Animal Control.
Thank you.
Councilor Eigenman.
Yes, motion to cut $1,000 from overtime,
Second.
51301.
51301 overtime, $1,000 cut. And seconded by Councilor Devlin, I believe. Discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
This is a shared intermunicipal agreement, and unfortunately, my understanding is all overtime is on Newburyport, even if the overtime is expended on a neighboring community. If there really is some sort of wild animal rampaging through Newburyport, I'm sure we can figure it out. I would rather not essentially just give a gift of $1,000. Thank you.
Further discussion. Councilor Khan.
Yeah, thank you, Council President. Just a point of clarification. Was this already contractually agreed upon or not? I couldn't remember, because we just had the contract in.
Mr. Manning or Mr. Coogan?
Still in committee.
My only comment would be that that position is part of a collective bargaining agreement that does provide for overtime for any hours worked above 40 hours. So if the employee were to work over the contractual amount, we would be required to pay him or her overtime.
Further discussion. Does the motion stand?
Absolutely.
All right, all those in favor of cutting $1,000 from 51301 Animal Control overtime, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No.
3 Musketeers.
Anything else on page 113?
119.
I think we're up to page 119. Sustainability. Cuts for sustainability. Hearing none, we're moving into public services.
Page 130. Yes, Mr. President. Motion to cut 10,000 from 51158.
51158. Labor.
Cut how much? 10 grand? How much?
10,000.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor O'Brien. Discussion, Councilor Zede.
Thank you. First thing is I want to allay anybody who's thinking that 10,000 means anything. Just a number I picked so I can get a discussion. I have been dying for DPS to grow for many years, but I was hoping that it would grow to serve the wards, not to serve downtown. So downtown recently got a fairly major investment in the parking garage. The wards need some attention, and we were told in committee that these two folks would be focused on downtown. You had a letter on your desk today saying they'd be focused on downtown. I take somewhat of an exception to that. We need pothole patrol out in the wards. And it has nothing to do with DPS, has nothing to do with the leadership or what's happening there. It's more philosophical. We built the garage, that was the downtown improvement. The parking system used to provide money that was profit to be used for downtown, that's going to the garage. Wouldn't it be fair to have 2 more DPS people out in every ward working on potholes and all the other things that we're struggling to keep up with? So the $10,000 doesn't represent anything in particular, but it is meant to have this discussion about this because it's something that's important to me.
Further discussion. Councilor Augerman.
That's my ward, and I have both. I have residents that resent downtown and downtown businesses that resent residents. So I see the councilor's point. I guess it's in the ward's interest to keep this in, but I do think it would be fair if it were not paid from the general fund. It should be paid from the parking account, because I understood that was supposed to be the source for things like downtown. So I guess my question for Ethan is, Director Manning, is if we appropriate the money, does that preclude it coming from the parking reserve receipts fund? I would believe where we've already provided the council with a revenue estimate for the budget, we would not be able to change that at this point without coming back with a supplemental appropriation.
Thank you. Perhaps you'll remain at the microphone. I think there's a follow-up, Mr. Manning. Councilor Zede?
Well, I don't have a follow-up,
No,
but
I
I did want to say that, again, the revenue for the parking system is shown in here, and that parking revenue is designed to balance exactly with 2 things: the parking page that we just went through, plus the debt service. That means that this is a loss. This is in the red. You're in the red here, and on anything else that's spent directly on the garage. And that's what I take exception to. So the garage hasn't just consumed all the parking money. It's now gone out into the general fund and is consuming more. At least half a person here is dedicated, we were told, to the garage. Half a person for the garage. The other 1.5 for downtown. It's frustrating. I mean, we all struggle to get enough resources to go out and do, say, pothole patrol in the spring and the summer, the times that it's busy. So that's my exception. Of course I want to see DPS grow because I've been long a favor of doing more in-house, but I don't know.
Mr. Coogan, would you like to respond?
I just want to clarify that I think the intention is predominantly that the 2 positions that we intend to hire would be downtown, and yes, we do have infrastructure that needs certain attention in order to maintain it and have for a benefit both of residents coming downtown, because I think we should all acknowledge that most of the money made downtown is by residents shopping and dining. So I do think there's a mutual relationship. As far there are when in the off season there's plowing that's going to be done. So these employees will be plowing downtown, but they'll also be plowing. They'll be picking up and plowing when need be. When we often have people that call out sick. We often have employees that are on vacation, and these guys would also be used for plowing in neighborhoods as well. So there's definitely some benefit for these positions. Cutting $10,000 prevents us from hiring a person in an ASME position.
Councilor Augerman.
Yeah, so I hope you understood the gist of my questioning. I absolutely want these 2 DPS people assigned downtown, but I have to agree with Councilor Zede that funding it out of the general fund is not my understanding of how that was going to work, and I don't think that's fair to my residents. So I would support the amendment, not because I don't want to hire the person, but because I want you to come back from the reserve receipts.
I have 40.
Mr. Coogan?
I would just say, timing-wise, we're looking to hire employees right at this moment in order for the season to begin. We're in the summer season right now, so I would say there is a timing issue, if that, regardless of where the money comes from.
Thank you. Further discussion, Councilor Vogel, and then Councilor O'Brien.
Thank you, Mr. President. To make a token cut just because is how it feels to me. I walk downtown every single day, and I can tell you that we need work downtown. There are loose bricks. There are sinking around trees. There's stumblings everywhere, and I report those day after day after day. And so they eventually do get done, but they need to be done a little bit quicker. I think we're cutting our nose off to spite our face. We want to grow the DPS, but yet we want to cut 2 people because they happen to be downtown. I see all these arguments. I get it. I understand we're trying to control all of this. This is a budget. We're trying to move forward. It's the beginning of the season. Let's just move forward with it, and if we don't like the way the structure is, we'll start to address it as we go along. And come next season, if you want to fine-tune this and you want to pull it from here instead of from there, do it that way. But this is sort of just tokenness, if you will. Is that a word?
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes. As a council for 20 years in Ward 6, we've always been promised to, get more workers in the DPS to take care of the wards, like has been stated before. I've been a strong supporter of the DPS. I advocated them to buy the plow that they, what I wanted to do was plow the streets on the way to the schools to make the safe routes to the schools, but I see them plowing downtown businesses. That's what gets people in my wards upset. Seeing the city plows doing downtown business sidewalks, picking up the trash twice a week, and it goes on, and then you ask for another one for the ward, or have one for 3 wards and hire 2 people, but it's going downtown. And I think most of the money comes from outside, not from people going downtown. No way people go downtown from most of the wards. It's from, you come here Saturday night, the place is packed, and all the stores are closed, just the restaurants are open, so those are the people that spend the money, so. But, it's 20 years, we always wanted to add people to the DPS because of the great job they're doing, and then they go downtown, which the people in the wards is a slap in the face.
Councilor Eigenman, then Councilor Khan.
Yeah, I object to the characterization that this is a token cut for the sake of a cut. I think that's out of order. I think that I gave a rationale that I do want these employees for my ward, but that I've made certain representations to residents of my ward that I will not favor downtown businesses and should be funded from the parking fund. So I resent that.
Councilor Khan.
Thank you, Council President.
Count 40.
I was actually not going to say it like that, but I think what I was going to say was that I didn't see it that way either. I think there's something to be learned during this process, and what I heard is that this is really more about the expectations of how some of these positions and roles were going to be actually funded. That's how I heard it. So, but I don't support the cut, but I do appreciate the arguments and the reasons why people are doing this, want to see this go down by 10,000, but I don't support it, but I appreciate hearing this deliberation, and I understand it, so thank you.
Councilor Genta, and then I think we could move to a vote on this.
I just wanted to pile on a little bit, since I represent the West End, or a good portion of it, with Councilor O'Brien. Everybody wants DPS workers, and the biggest thing that's said in the West End is, of course, if anything's needed downtown, that's taken care of, and then we get to wait. And to hear that we're going to have 2 more DPS workers and they're going to be dedicated to downtown really burns our ass. So, thank you.
Thank you, Larry.
Balance to strike. Councilor Tontar.
Actually, I'm not really convinced by the argument of the cut, but I am convinced by the Councilman's argument. So I would vote in favor of this cut in hopes that the administration will pay for this out of the parking.
Okay, let's take a roll call vote on this. I'm not sure we need a roll call.
Roll call.
No, I was just being a goof. I said I want to go on record that I'm
Councilor
persuaded
Devlin.
by Councilor Tontar, who's persuaded by Councilor.
I don't think we need a roll call on this. Let's take a voice vote. All those in favor of cutting $10,000 from the
51158.
51158, is that correct, Councilor Zede?
Yes, Mr. President.
Say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
The chair's in doubt. Roll call.
Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
Yes.
Councilor Tontar.
Yes.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls. Councilor Earls.
Yes.
He said yes.
He said yes.
Councilor Eigenman.
As do I, yes.
Councilor Junta.
Yes.
That was close.
Councilor President.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you, councilors. Anything else on pages 130 or 131? Councilor Devlin?
Nope.
Just clearing your throat?
Raising his hand.
Page 143, Planning and Development. Page 144, License Commission, Concom, Historic Commission. 145, Planning Board, ZBA. Page 150, Building Department. 151, Commission on Disabilities. Page 158, Parks.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Councilor Devlin?
Yes, to 51190 seasonal labor, $12,850 in cuts.
12,000, could you repeat the number, please?
12850, 12,850, brings it down to 30,000.
Gotcha.
It's a line item.
Seconded by Councilor Zede. Discussion. Councilor Devlin?
Yeah, we heard testimony in the budget hearing with Parks Department. It was excellent information that we received. One of their goals or short-term goals, and they didn't want to call it aspirational because it was sort of, they did a study to see how many, they really thought about how many people they would need, about 5 full-time people. But one of the things that I heard is that the schools, they're no longer doing the schools and fields, and the part-time seasonal labor was going up from 12,400 to 42,850, and it just seemed like a big leap to me. That couldn't be precisely defined for the need, and I thought it was something that as seasonal labor they could come back to us, and we could have a full council and a more refined discussion on it. So that's the nature of my cut.
Further discussion, Councilor Vogel.
We did hear that the schools are going away, but we also heard that the rail trail has certainly emerged. And if you've walked the rail trail on the south end, you'll know that it continues to be in need of continued service. So I'm opposed to this cut.
Mr. Coogan, would you like to respond?
I would just want to make a point that we feel that it's important to continue to provide additional funding for our Parks Department staff. We've heard in the testimony, the Parks Department has done a very nice job outlining what it would take to take care of all of our 26 parks. And I'll remind you that majority of them, if not all but 1 or 2, are in the wards outside of downtown. So we're trying to make sure that we provide the funding necessary to keep these parks in order.
Councilor Tantar, then Councilor Zede.
I'm opposed to this cut. We heard from the Parks Director that over the past few years, and over the past year in particular, the Parks Department has developed a better understanding of, on one hand, the needs for the city's parks and how to really meet the needs of the citizens who want better parks. All right, and what it will cost to do that. The Parks Director indicated that in her estimate, this budget would get them approximately 60% to where they would need to be in order to provide, make the parks the kind of condition that residents would expect in this city. So, I'm going to support this because I think we need to make the parks.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor Zede.
Yeah, I support the cut for a couple of reasons. One is, I think one of the things that came out of the discussion was sort of this clarity that it's emerging on whether full-time labor versus seasonal labor is more effective or more useful. I think what I would remind folks, and the reason that I support this line instead of the full-time, is you've still got flexibility in the personnel services, but you leave the full-time person intact and you let that department make that decision as to what makes more sense. So that's the first thing I would say. Second thing is, again, we seem to have somewhat a false dichotomy, like if we pass this cut, we're sniping the parks. The entire budget for this department's going up 61.6%. We're nipping here, honestly. We're making a cut to try and ask for some more clarity as the years evolve as to what is going to be the most effective solution. We've had discussions about this department over the years, and so the personnel services group is going up by 56.6. If you cut 12, I didn't do the math, but you easily be over 50 anyways. So this, this idea, and the last thing I'll say is the rail trail largely goes through my ward, and of course I want to see it get taken care of, but this is where the rubber meets the road on some of these projects where we're told to be really no operating budget impact, and then when the time comes, all of a sudden, we've got to ramp up in order to take care of it, and I do take exception to that as well. So I ask you to support this cut.
Councilor Devlin?
Yeah, just for the folks at home, we give the numbers here who might not. So full-time labor is going up 107.2%, which is hiring another full-time laborer. And then the seasonal labor, I gave the number 12,400, and it's proposed to go up to 42,850, which would be a 245.6%. And again, Rome wasn't built in a day, and those are large increases. All I'm asking on the seasonal labor is that if it doesn't, if they come back to us if they need more.
Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote on this matter. All those in favor of cutting $12,850 from item 51190, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. The chair's in doubt. Roll call.
Councilor Khan.
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tontar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Zede.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
Yes.
Councilor Agaman.
Yes.
Councilor Junta.
No.
Councilor Connell.
No.
Motion passes.
Thank you. Anything else on page 158?
Yes, Mr. President. I'd like
Councilor
to
Zede.
make a motion to cut 51901 by 24,000 and 54201 collectively by 6,000.
Sorry, what page are you on?
Same page, page 158.
Repeat those, please.
Yes. 51901, downtown improvement labor,
Okay.
cut to zero, and under supplies, 54201, go from 6,000 to zero.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Councilor O'Brien. Councilor Zede.
So I won't exhaust my downtown arguments again, but part of this is, again, the garage bleeding out into other lines. Part of this, we were told, is to care for the plantings around the garage, certainly a noble goal, but you're spreading the money around the budget and you're hiding the red ink. That's my take on it. The parking system, again, balances with the parking page solely and the debt service. Anything else that's buried into these other lines is a loss, and that's even if the projections come to fruition. So if you want to spend this money, much like DPS, come out to the wards and take care of the parks out there.
Further discussion. Councilor Eigenman.
I apologize, I was out of state when the Parks Director came. How much of the 24,000 is for the garage?
Would you like to approach the microphone so people at home can hear? Thanks, Lee.
Give me a moment, please, just to...
Take your time. Get it right.
Sorry, that was another...
So I guess while Lisa's looking for material, the intention of what this funding source is to fund downtown items outside of the parking garage. Now, there are a couple trees that are in front of the parking garage, so I think there's a question of who and how and when those will be maintained, but a very small percentage, if that, would be coming from this. I don't know if you have any more information.
So, Lisa Reed, Parks Director, let me read you the different numbers regarding downtown areas. The Green Street parking lot is estimated
total of $16,907.50 for annual maintenance. In-street fountain, our projection is $23,620. That includes the entire plaza area, benches, not just the fountain itself, but the maintenance of that entire area.
And testing, water testing?
Water testing, absolutely, which is every other day.
Thank you.
In-street playground, it's $7,540. Patrick Tracy Square, $7,940. And then I don't have numbers yet. It was just decided that we would take care of the planting beds around the parking garage, so I didn't have projections for those.
Thank you. Further discussion?
The total that I just read to you is $46,007.50 for all those areas.
Thank you. Further discussion?
What's the question? Let's go.
Hearing none, we'll take a roll call on these cuts.
This is to zero out 51901 and 54201. Councilor Khan.
No.
Councilor O'Brien.
Yes.
Councilor Shan.
No.
Councilor Tontar.
No.
Councilor Vogel.
No.
Councilor Z.
Yes.
Councilor Devlin.
Yes.
Councilor Earls.
No.
Councilor Agaman.
No.
Councilor Junta.
No.
Councilor Connell.
No.
Motion fails.
Anything else on page 158? Parks. Page 164, Council on Aging.
Yeah, I dare you.
Page 172, Public Library.
I dare you.
Page 179, Youth Services. Page 183, Veteran Services. Page 187, Public Schools. Page 196, Human Resources, and 197, Insurance Group.
Yes, Mr. President. Motion to cut $100,000 on page 197 from 51700.
Second.
And that is the health insurance premiums
Correct.
line. Counselor, is there a second? I didn't hear that.
Second.
Was there a second?
Second.
Yeah. Thank you. Counselor Z.
So the reason for this cut is that this is my fourth budget, and the insurance premium lines in particular has been pretty much the #1 provider on the cost side of free cash for the last many years. Director Manning pulled the last 3 years for me. In 2017, it yielded $213.5. In 2018, $111, and the estimate, at least as of this, which was $523, was $106. This is where I will say about so-called conservative budgeting. There's at least two lines that we know we chronically underfund and that we will have to put money into. One is the fire overtime line, and the other one is the snow and ice. And this has pretty much been the offset for that, at least in some part, over the last several years. So I'm asking to reclaim it now, and if it doesn't work out and no more money is needed, then just as we do with other important things like snow and ice and fire, you can use free cash or another source.
Thank you. Mr. Manning, would you like to approach?
Thank you, Mr. President. I would comment that this line item is used to fund insurance for the entire city, including school employees. It would make me very nervous bringing down any contingency in this line item to account for shifts within the various plans. The cost between a HMO individual plan and a PPO family plan is significant. Just having 5 people switch on to a PPO family plan could cost the city $100,000 alone right there. I would hate to put us in a position where we aren't able to pay our health insurance bill for the city. So I would recommend funding it as recommended.
Thank you. Councillor Eigenman and then Councillor Devlin.
2 questions for the director. Question number 1, I'll just give them both and you can answer. So the councilor from Ward 1 says that customarily there's some slack in here and there's about 100,000 extra. That's his assertion, so I want to know if that's true. And then second, wouldn't it be possible to come back to us for a supplemental approval? Those are my 2 questions.
Yes, there is typically a balance left over at the end of the year. There has been, I'd say, probably for the past decade. However, by essentially underfunding the line item, we'd be creating a structurally unbalanced budget if we were to see costs exceed what we budgeted. I think it's just bad policy to budget for what could be the wrong amount.
What about supplementing?
Sure, you could supplement that from free cash, but then you're using free cash to fund the budget, which would just go against our financial policies.
Okay.
Councillor Devlin.
I have a question for the finance director. So, are you trying to say that you work so close to the edge on this one that you've only built in a $100,000 cushion?
That's correct. And the cushion was larger over the years. When I first started, it was closer to 300,000, and we were turning back a lot more to free cash. We have reined that into a much more reasonable amount. But given the number of subscribers, we just really don't know what can happen over the course of a year.
Wasn't your testimony just that this has funded a surplus for the last several years? But you're not expecting that to happen this year?
No, based on the current subscriber base, I would expect a surplus. However, that subscriber base can change and will change.
And then, again, the timing of that would prevent you from coming back to us for a supplemental request?
No, we would know as people change plans. However, we would be coming back to you for a transfer request.
Right.
From free cash most likely, which, yes, that is an option.
All right, thank you.
Yeah, but my follow-up question, isn't it structurally unsound to have a budget that doesn't balance on fire overtime and snow and ice? Those are both equally crucial, critical services, arguably, and we just did a transfer for fire overtime. Why wouldn't we apply the same standard for those lines?
And I think that's a valid point, Counselor. But I think by cutting down the health insurance line, we're just making the problem even worse because there's just less available turn back at the end of the year. I mean, we know as a general fund budget, we spend about 99% of it each year, and there are turnbacks across the board. But that's how we close the books with the fund balance.
And on the snow and ice, I believe it's an exceptional situation that we can carry over that into the next year because we can't accurately predict. Is that correct?
That's correct. Snow and ice is the only budgetary line item that you're legally allowed to overspend. And I would say it's not fully funded. You're correct. We've tried to make an increase to it again this year. And hopefully one day we can get to the point where we have a more realistic number in that department.
Further discussion? I'm sorry I had to chime in on that one. That's in the back of my mind. Okay, so the proposal is to cut $100,000 from 51,700 insurance line item for health insurance premiums. All those in favor of cutting $100,000 from that item, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. The chair's in doubt. Roll call, please.
No.
Council O'Brien?
Yes.
Council Shan?
No.
Council Tonto?
No.
Council Vogel?
No.
Council Zede?
Yes.
Council Devlin?
Yes.
Council Earls?
Yes.
Council Agaman?
Yes.
Council Junta?
Yes.
Council Connell?
No.
Passes.
I believe the motion prevails.
Motion prevails.
Anything else on page 197?
Nope.
Yeah. Yes.
199, debt service. I don't think there's much to do here.
Cut the debt service.
I see a page intentionally left blank. Water enterprise funds, can we touch these? Page 210 and 211 is where I am.
Mr.
Councilor
President?
Eigenman.
Yes, motion to cut legal expenses on page 210, 53020. Zero it out.
You're kidding me. A lawyer?
Yeah.
Proposing, I'm sorry. Repeat, I apologize for my...
So it's a 25,000 cut.
Second. And seconded. Discussion. Councilor
I
Eigenman.
mean, I did get a chance to discuss this in the budget workshop. I'm a big proponent of spending maximum amounts of money on lawyers, but the fact is we didn't spend anything fiscal year 2019. The testimony we had was that this line was created during the Plum Island fiasco with CDM Smith, and that's settled. And actually, there's earmarked funds for further work on Plum Island. So I just think it would be wise, rather than create a line item that can be shunted around within purchase of services, that we show a little bit more discipline and just cut it. And if there's a legal expense that comes up, of course, we can revisit it.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of cutting $25,000 from 53020, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed?
No.
I hear one no. Page 211.
Mr. President, same cut, wait, do I have the right page?
Yes.
No, I don't. No, I don't. I was jumping to sewer. Sorry, I had sewer on my mind.
Mine was in the sewer.
We all.
Sewer, page 220, 221. Councilor Eigenman.
Same cut, 53020, same reasons. Sewer legal expenses go from 25,000 to zero.
Was there a second?
Second.
Second, Councilor Earls. Discussion? I believe he made the justification clear. No further discussion. All those in favor of that cut, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
I hear one no. And that included page 221. Was there anything there? 226, Harbor Master Enterprise Fund. Page 227. The CIP.
I see you too. Huh?
Before we talk about the bottom line for the budget, the witching hour has approached. We'll need a motion from the members to extend our meeting beyond 11 o'clock, which I believe we will do. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. I don't want to either. But I'm going to ask the clerk to read the order, and I'm going to ask the finance director to make certain that the numbers he speaks in public are correct.
This is the Order 105, the general fund budget for the City of Newburyport for FY 2020. Be approved in the amount of $39,383,365.63 and $30,875,762 of this amount is established as a school department budget. Following enterprise fund budgets for FY 2020 are also approved as follows. Water Enterprise Fund, $5,371,088.84. Sewer, $7,586,606.25. Harbor Master, $514,867.82. Submitted, Councilor Tantar.
I believe the finance director has some instructions for you.
That was my error. I filled in the wrong number on the first blank. It should be 70,259, 12763.
70 million.
70 million.
70 million. $70,259,126.63.
What a bargain.
Speak 'em again.
Slowly.
Everything else is the same.
All right, just for clarification, because
I'll
it's
repeat for the
important.
public.
Please do.
Thank you.
The total general fund budget is $70,259,127.63, of which $30,875,762 is appropriated for the school department. And the enterprise funds were correct as read.
Thank you. All right, we will take, we've already had a motion at the outset from Councilor Tantar, motion to approve. I will interpret as a motion to approve this bottom line, and we'll take a roll call vote.
As amended.
Do we need?
Approve as amended.
As amended. Councilor Zede, well, approve as amended, is there a second? Whoever seconded him originally, I believe was Councilor Vogel, but I stand to be corrected. Discussion, Councilor Zede.
Yeah, so my comment is, I'd like to ask the council to push for this, the money we cut, the pennies we pinched, $247,725 to go to the Newburyport Public Schools. This order, this number in the second box doesn't represent any increase from what was budgeted. We have a chance here to take that money, put it to the schools, and make the increase for the schools 4.26%, which we have agreed now is a very low number because we're talking about 18s and 20s. So that's what I suggest to us is we reject this and we ask for that 247 to go to the school budget. That's probably 2 or 3 teachers easy.
Second.
Well, we have a motion before us, before we can take up a second motion. I understand the intention. I think as a matter of parliamentary procedure, we should dispose of the first motion before talking about, I understand the comment that you've made, but I don't think we can add a motion unless you're placing that as an amendment.
Point of order. I believe the councilor was arguing against my motion. He was arguing we should vote no.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah, but point of order,
I think we got several hands in a row. Councilor Eigenman?
Yeah, I just had a question. So if we vote no, then we can propose a different set of numbers, or why don't we just amend, why don't you just do a motion to amend? Why don't you just add the 247 and be done with it? Can we do that?
That's a very good point, Mr. President. What concerns me, if you have a matter on the floor for approval, and it goes down, fails,
Yeah.
it's gone from the floor.
Yeah, we have to do like a motion to reconsider. So
You'd have to.
So
So a motion to
why don't
amend
you do
would
a
be
motion to
cleaner.
amend?
Motion to amend it then. He amended it. I second it. Call it a
Okay,
day.
well, I'll,
In the form of a motion to amend.
may I make that motion? Can I do that?
State what you want to do,
Motion
please.
to approve as amended is on the floor. You
No, I mean, may I add 247,725 to that second number?
No.
That's why I was arguing against the motion. That's the only power I believe I have, is we have to reject this and ask for a new one that shows that. Unless you're saying I can add that amount.
Well, I don't understand.
You can't.
Councilor Eigenman?
I want to make sure that if I vote, I'm in favor of your idea, but I don't want to vote against the budget if that means we don't have a budget. So do we get another set of numbers? That's my question.
Councilor Zede?
Would the administration like to tell us if they like this idea or have any at all?
We did this last year, did we not, or the year before?
2 years.
We tried to do this.
I think the language that was used is essentially it was your firm wish and desire that this be added to the school budget.
Well, I have more than wishes and desires this year. Yeah, so.
Mr. Manning? Mr. Coogan, who wants to respond?
Well, we've discussed prior that obviously the council cannot increase the budget,
Nope.
That's the problem.
which has been tested
can only
in past
suggest.
years. So if the question is, can the council increase the school budget appropriation, it's a no.
I'm not sure that's the question. I think the question is, if we reject this budget with the understanding of the administration that the amount we cut from the general appropriations could be redistributed to the school, what would the administration's response be? And I believe Mr. Coogan is probably the one to respond to that.
Well, I guess I would say that the administration built the budget with the intention of our plan going forward and operating, and I believe the school did too. They created a budget that they're satisfied with, that was voted unanimously by the school committee. What I heard in this discussion about some of these cuts is that, well, the city could just come back and find more, or would you like to? Okay.
I'm sitting with the superintendent and the finance director from the schools. They built a very solid budget. They're very happy with their budget. You need to understand, if we transfer hundreds of thousands of dollars over, how do we sustain that? How do we sustain that next year in terms of additional increase? You know, they built the budget based on their needs. They presented the budget to you. They're in the next room. They're very comfortable with the budget they have this year. Granting them an extra couple $100,000, there might be a behavioral position they need, but let's work with them around what it is they need, not just randomly throw a bunch of money at them. And Sean, you know, come, I mean, we talked about this in my office. You know, he's very comfortable with the budget that he has this year. It's 61% of our city budget.
Mr. Gallagher, do you want to express an opinion here?
Sure.
As superintendent of schools?
Yes. So we went through our budget process. It was a lengthy process. And we set our priorities. We really focusing on this year for social emotional health and really supporting, you know, our students and the families. So as we came in and worked through our budget process, we kept school committee and the joint ed apprised of, you know, what we're doing. We developed our priority list with our leadership team. So the budget that we proposed to school committee, we felt pretty comfortable moving forward. So, and I had a great meeting with the city council and the finance committee here. And I think as we move forward, as we start to take a look at our strategic plan and implement our strategic plan, I think down the road, you know, we may, you know, next year's budget season, you know, have an increase of where we're at. I think for this year, we really were focusing on our social emotional learning, supporting our students and families, and then also really focus on curriculum instruction and assessment. But I see down the road, really emphasizing instructional technology and some bigger picture items, utilizing our strategic plan. So I think right now, as we move into next year's budget and the budget that was approved by school committee, we were very comfortable with what we presented.
And we also have 3 contracts that aren't settled yet.
Councilor Ackerman.
Yeah, I just want to put a fine point on it. So you don't want us to really, this is the only question before us right now. You don't want us to direct the $247,000 to the schools.
Well, I mean, I can't. If you said, hey, you have, you know, more money, we haven't planned on.
Again, this is the question before us. It's 11:10 at night. We all want to go home. Do you want us to direct the $247,000 to your department?
Oh, I think that's a tough question, because we could always use more money, but as we developed our budget, we really focused on. Yeah, I would say we could always use more money.
Can I make a suggestion? Can I just make a suggestion, please?
But one moment. I think the superintendent is hearing some inclination on the part of some counselors, maybe a majority of counselors, maybe it's unanimous, that we would like to see some additional funds given to the school. And if money fell out of the sky, that would be wonderful. But there are, and I would suggest this to the counselors, that if that desire was genuine, that there is always a possibility of a supplemental budget throughout the year
Could we go
that
back?
might address that kind of issue.
We never just randomly throw large sums of money without specific line items. Look at how detailed you were tonight. That you just want to give a couple $100,000 to the schools and say, go for it? We need a line item budget of what they want to spend the money on. And we will come back to you with a supplemental budget once we have input from the leadership team, from finance in the schools, and also from the school committee who will vote on this. We're happy to do that. I offered that last year too.
Councilor Devlin.
Can we ask the finance director or the chair of budget and finance, what exactly, so I've got a difference of 187, what did all the cuts amount up to? I mean, we did a bunch of random cuts, so I must have missed that, and the folks at home maybe missed it as well.
Keep track of them. I understand. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
247, 725.
247.
247.
I'd like to have it said out loud so that the viewing audience who is still with us can hear it. I didn't hear this announced anywhere. We just got a piece of paper thrown on our desk.
You're correct. Mr.
A
Manning?
lot of hard work went into this.
Yep.
Sure, and I'll provide copies to all of you before you leave tonight of the approved budget. So for the general fund, the cuts totaled $197,725. To the water enterprise fund, $25,000. To the sewer enterprise fund, $25,000. For a grand total of $247,725.
And then, so that was just taken off the overall budget. The amount that was in for the schools here is exactly the same as
As proposed,
budget.
yep.
Okay.
Thanks for clarification, Mr. Mayor.
Councilor Earls.
Years ago, we were in this same position, and we asked the superintendent to stand at the microphone and say exactly where the money was going to go. I don't think it's fair to the superintendent to now just say, sure, I'll take this money, figure out what to do with it. It's not sustainable, as was brought up, so it really can't be salary. Are we just going to heat the buildings more? Where's the money go? It's not fair just to throw a pot of money, and now the public says, okay, where's that $250,000 going? New textbooks? Maybe, I don't know. Last time we did this, the superintendent stood up and said exactly what was planned for the money, and I think that's fair.
Councilor Tantar and Councilor Zede.
For the past couple of years, two members of the Budget and Finance Committee have served on the Education Committee. And one of the things that the chair of the Education Committee did not report on today was the fact that at our last Ed Committee meeting, we had a fairly extensive discussion with the superintendent on exactly this point, all right? And, you know, I tell you, compared, I'm not going to say it, all right? Let me just say, I have a high degree of confidence in the superintendent. I have a high degree of confidence in the process he used to construct this budget. Sometimes in the past, I get a sense that, you know, the aspirational budgets were throwing money at cost centers without a real vision or plan or strategy. And my sense from our discussion in the Ed Committee is that this superintendent is developing a strategy. And that takes time, and it takes a lot of discussions with his team, with teachers, and with parents. And that's ongoing. And in the committee, that's where he's going and develop. To throw money before he has that set of conversations, before that vision, before that strategy exists, is simply premature. Right? That's what I got out of discussions.
Yes, I'm going to respond to a couple things. First of all, on the sustainability aspect in particular, this is 100% sustainable. That's why it's so important. When you cut money from an annual operating budget and you move it to a different part of the budget, it will exist there next year. This is not one-time money. These are cuts we made from operating lines. Many of you voted for these cuts next year. Just as every line in this budget shows an increase in varying degrees, that money will exist next year. That's why operating money is the gold, as I've said on this floor before, and free cash and one-time money is silver. This is the most important money. If you put this 197 or the 247, if you took the money from the enterprise funds, that's a little bit sketchy, but if you did, that money exists again next year. That's your base for your increase next year. So to me, that's a non-starter of an argument. So that's number one. And number two is, the schools did show us aspirations they have. Whether they're aspirational or not is a different discussion. But when we had the budget meetings, there were things that they wanted that were priority this and priority that. So we can't say we have confidence in the superintendent and the school committee to do everything perfectly, but we can't give them $200,000 and expect them to put the money to good use. we're standing here arguing about giving the schools money. I don't see how anybody would make sense out of that. We all know this is a high priority. We all know there are needs and aspirations we all want to hit in the schools. The idea that anybody would argue against it because at 11:30 somebody can't tell us it's going to go to books and pencils and paper clips. I mean, that's why we have a duly elected school committee and a school leadership team, and the idea that they couldn't use 200 to me is foreign, to be honest.
Councilor Devlin?
To X this out of the budget and to just say, okay, we're going to boost the budget by 197,725, a little bit like I'm going to take my ball and go home. And I'm not sure that this is the most mature reaction to cuts that were made. And our school system does have needs, and we did discuss in the budget hearing that they have aspirations. I was told in the budget hearing and also by members of the school committee that the 3.5% that was hit was what was allocated to the school systems. So then they said, okay, we've got to fit it within 3.5%, and they managed to add another 0.9%, I believe, in costs and savings, so scrimping and being more efficient, and that is where the superintendent should be applauded. But I think it does a disservice to our kids, and it does a disservice. There's lots of areas. We have some class sizes that are bigger, and yeah, these are things that we put the money in, and that's the problem. You go hire an employee, you've got to fund that employee next year, and if I'm on the council, I absolutely intend to fund that employee. There's world languages. We've been hearing that. It went away. There's the expense of possible later school start times. That's gone. That's been put on the back burner. There are lots of things that this money could go to, and again, I think parents with children in the school system are going to be extremely disappointed with this lack of imagination.
Further discussion of the councilors. So the motion on the floor is, Richard?
It's just to approve. It's a motion to approve as amended.
Motion to approve as
Nothing
amended.
more.
There's nothing more to that than that.
So,
And the number, again, repeat the big number, which was
70,259,127.63.
Thank you.
There's nothing else, we're just that number.
That has been withdrawn.
That's it?
That's correct. What is on your desk?
Yep.
Actually, what is on your desk, 39 million, has changed to 7 million.
We're running the city for 9 mil.
Million, that's right. No big deal.
So we understand that's what the budget is. I'll ask for a roll call on this completed budget.
Councilor Khan?
Yes.
Councilor O'Brien?
Yes.
Councilor Shan?
Yes.
Councilor Tantar?
Yes.
Councilor Vogel?
Yes.
Councilor Z?
No.
Councilor Devlin?
No.
Councilor Earls?
Yes.
Councilor Eigenman?
Yes.
Councilor Junta?
Yes.
Councilor Collins?
Yes.
9-2. Motion passes. We have a budget.
Thank you, councilors. I think that concludes almost everything. Good of the order. I have something to say in good of the order, but perhaps other councilors have something they'd like to add. My only comment is, I appreciate all the hard work you've put into this budget, particularly to councilors on the Budget and Finance Committee, all the department heads. If you're listening at home, I don't know why you would, it's after 11 o'clock at night. I want to make a reference to Councilor Zeid's proposal, which perhaps the superintendent and his staff can think about. And the mayor's apparent assent to my suggestion that supplemental budgets may be available during the course of this coming year. And, all right, I'll take that back. That was my comment. And if they were, I think we've tipped our hand on the inclination of the council to fund schools. With that said, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. We're done.